ask, just to give you a little heads up, under public comment, normally, I think the way things have been done is we usually don't accept public comment under the informational items, but because they're pretty important to everybody, we're going to go ahead and allow public comment under those two informational items that are later in the agenda. So for public comment, in a few minutes, you can speak to the committee updates and consent agenda and director reports, and otherwise the action items and informational items, you can speak at the time that we talk about those agenda items. So having said that, Janet, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Janet.
Not yet.
All right, so we'll move right into public comment. Mr. Rask, who is also taking 3 minutes from Sully. So you have 6 minutes. How does the clock get set? Rachel, can you set that clock for 6 minutes? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, welcome.
Thank you for allowing comment under information items. They are two very important items today. One of the things to cover today, I want you all to know that HART will be discussing possibly voting on whether to seek an Attorney General opinion on the issue of lobbying. They will do so on June 6th. And don't take my word for it, you can confirm it with Catherine Egan, the CEO. I don't know if Mr. Zimmett or any of you have a copy of a memo that their general counsel, David Smith, wrote on that issue, but if not, get it for advanced reading. But very briefly, every case will depend on the special act that created the agency, the circumstances, so it's going to be different than in your case. But the same reasoning applies, and that is whether lobbying is expressly and specifically authorized. Mr. Smith is not opposed to seeking the Attorney General opinion after he heard my take on it. And I would hope that you would also look to seek an Attorney General opinion. I would like you to put this on your agenda for future board meetings. I will not attend the next two board meetings, but please consider it. We're going to get later to the issue of buses and your sustainability plan. I just briefly want to mention something that I discussed with Mr. Scott, and that is that if you're struggling to buy new buses, why don't you conserve them by driving them less? In other words, cut the revenue miles. On the consent agenda items, just to read into the public record some of the comments that I made in an email to the board. The Almerton Road park building demolition, the disrepair there is caused by agency neglect. No public, no private entity would have allowed that to happen. So therefore, I ask, let's not go middle, let's make sure there's still any more middle. Ask what other buildings are in disrepair, and what has to be done to ensure that more do not fall into disrepair. It could have been leased out and never was. On the issue of boardroom audiovisual equipment, I want to thank Mr. Johnson for clarifying that as far as why it was rescinded. And on transportation disadvantage contracts, I don't understand why these contracts have increased 6% over last year, given that we supposedly have low inflation. That's what they tell us in Washington and out of Tallahassee. And also fuel costs have dropped this last year. For those of you who sit on our MPO, please speak to Mr. Blanton, because as I documented in my email, he has made some statements to the press. One of them was, I think it probably makes it more likely that you have a cross-bay connection for light rail cement if you had a funding mechanism in place and a commitment from both counties to provide funding. In other words, it sounds like he's advocating for a tax hike or more spending at the very least. And as I said in my email, Mr. Blunt, please understand that I wrote dead in this county. And 90% of auto trips in Ellis, Hillsborough, Pasco, doesn't matter where you look, they originate and end within the county. So we don't need these cross-bay connections. Also, I discussed the following with Mr. Miller before the meeting. I just want you to understand how a member of the public, probably many members of the public, look at something like this when PSTA puts it out. This is page 83 of your agenda packet. It says at the top, need to expand services. Whose need? Public's need. We have declining ridership, seriously declining ridership. So whose need is it? Is it the need of bus drivers who need a job? Is it the need of the bus manufacturers, electric bus manufacturers, who perhaps donate to the Sierra Club? And then it says newspaper/editorials. The implication is that PSTA somehow can shape these. Now, Mr. Miller, when I talked to him before the meeting, he doesn't agree with that, but that's how it can look like to the public. Whose needs are being served here? So I'll have more comments later, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rusk. Okay, I'm going to deviate a little bit. Mr. Walters Lepecki says he cannot stay for our presentation later and wanted to give his comments on electric buses.
Thank you so much, everyone. Good morning.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Miller, members of the board. Good morning. Just wanted to touch up briefly on the exploration of battery electric buses. I do applaud PSTA once again for doing the research needed to come this far. But I still think that not enough is being done to seriously explore the possibility of at least buying 2 battery electric buses and the necessary infrastructure needed to power those buses. It really doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the benefits of these buses will be far-reaching, far beyond a fleet of 35 straight diesel buses. It just seems that some within PSTA still have not figured out that concluding that straight diesel is the way to go is the right direction. No, it's not. It's the wrong direction. Straight diesels are not clean. They fill the air with smog, and as appealing as they may look in cost, it doesn't save a lot of money in the long run because you're still going to spend a lot more money in maintenance, especially when those buses get old. The other thing is that the mentality seems to still stand that these buses are not going to be able to run on the bulk of the PSTA system. That's wrong too, because there's a variety of routes, such as the 5, the 7, the 22, that these buses can run on. They're not extraneously long routes. And if the October service changes go through and some of the longer routes are split up, you can put the buses on those routes as well because they're going to be shortened. So I am urging the PSTA board, especially those who are serving on the county commission, please continue to seriously consider these buses and allocate the resources needed to get the charging station, whatever other required infrastructure, and the 2 buses. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Compton.
Good morning. Phil Compton, Sierra Club, 1990 Central Avenue, St. Petersburg. Sorry. Just want to say thanks to Commissioner Ken Welch and Mayor Buchowski for coming out and participating in the Hands Across the Sand event on Treasure Island at the Bilmar on Saturday. where lots of people formed a gigantic human sun with the words 100% clean energy. It was a pretty amazing thing, and I'm practically surprised that we pulled it off that way, because you could actually read those words. We tend to think of solar power's potential to replace coal and natural gas as something that can power our buildings. But let's not forget, it can also replace the oil that we now use to power our vehicles, and also the natural gas that some people use to power vehicles. 6 years ago, let's not forget, the Deepwater Horizon oil was threatening our $6 billion beach tourism industry here in Pinellas County, and we were very lucky to miss getting that oil on our Pinellas beaches. If the weather had been different, if it had been a different time of year, the scientists at USF College of Marine Science assure us we would have been nailed by that. And today, this hasn't got much publicity, but there are those in the U.S. Senate who would remove the federal protection that our Gulf Coast uniquely enjoys, and Senator Bill Nelson is once again fighting for us to preserve that protection. We can all make our homes and offices more efficient. We did that at Sierra Club 4 years ago with the Net Zero Energy Office, and we should all check out the new EVs that don't use any oil. But there is something only you can do. There's something that you have the opportunity to do. On behalf of Sierra Club, I want to applaud Commissioner Welch's proposal to the Board of County Commissioners recently to provide PSTA with just a bit of the county's BP settlement funds for the purpose of acquiring electric bus charging station. We urge you who are on the BOCC to also support Commissioner Welch's proposal, and for the rest of you to add your voices in support of what to us seems to be the most appropriate, fitting way to use these funds to help ensure that the threat of oil drilling off our shores never materializes here by eliminating your demand for this source of supply of oil, to show Florida and the world how to do that, and to show the world how they too can take action today that will help save our beaches tomorrow. There truly isn't time to delay. This isn't an idea that can be placed back on a shelf in the hopes that you might do it someday. Thanks to Commissioner Welch, that day can come this year, not years down the road, and Sierra Club really does look forward to working with the board and the staff here to help you realize that shift to the types of buses that your passengers will love and your bottom line will adore as well. And I'll have more specific remarks on this issue in a little while. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Compton. Okay, I don't see any other cards. Did we miss anybody for public comment? All right, we'll move on to our committee updates. Our first item is Transit Riders Advisory Committee. Elaine Mann, welcome.
Good morning.
Vice Chairman Bajowski, Mr. Miller, esteemed board members, the Transit Riders Advisory Committee met on Tuesday, May 17th. Henry Lukasik, PSTA Director of Maintenance, presented the recommended revisions to the Almerton Park and Ride. The Park and Ride is to be updated and upgraded, including removal of the derelict building currently occupying the property. A central island with a landscaped public space and new bus shelters will be constructed to improve the rider experience and bus circulation. Committee discussion focused on accessibility of parking spaces for the physically challenged and safety of riders as they traverse from the parking area. The site plan has taken those items into consideration. Recommendation from TRAC also addressed utilizing this improvement to create a marketing and PR campaign to increase ridership from this designated park and ride. The Transit Riders Advisory Committee unanimously endorsed approval of a contract with JAM 520 for construction and improvements at the Almerton Park and Ride. PSTA staff Bob Lasher, Christine McFadden, and Juan Luvian then updated us on the June and October service improvement rollout. The PSTA is intent on providing maximum service to the ridership. Town hall workshops were held throughout the month of May to obtain and respond to rider feedback. The grid system is being instituted where possible. Route efficiencies are lending themselves to create more coverage and service span. Service is being restored to Crystal Lakes Manor and Magnolia Gardens. The October improvements will continue to streamline service and create efficiencies. TRAC is in support of the recommended changes. Discussion demonstrated concern for the lack of direct service to the new Clearwater Countryside Library. Since the library is moved from a regular route, it is only accessible through specific requests to the connector that services that area. Staff has followed up since TRAC and is looking into the potential for providing regular service to the library. We invite all of you to attend our next meeting on Tuesday, June 14th at 4 p.m. here at the PSTA. And for those of you whose schedules don't allow, we encourage you to view the video of the track meeting online at the PSTA website. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments for Elaine?
Thank
You so much for your service. All right, our next item is the Metropolitan Planning Organization update, and that would be me. At our last meeting, we talked about our transportation improvement program and an amendment. You all will remember what was added to it is the Tampa Bay Express TBX bridge in Pinellas County from the bridge to North Kennedy Boulevard. You all will remember that PSTA as well as MPO, it's all submitted letters of concern that the bridge or that that this project and the toll lanes wouldn't go all the way to downtown St. Petersburg. They are recommending it be added to the TIP in phases. This is a first phase. They're going to go for a second phase. We are going to hear a presentation at the next meeting in regards to the whole thing. And MPO is looking to do a resolution of support for the project. I'm waiting to hear what everybody has to say, because I know we're all been very concerned about not getting that in the first phase of the project. It might mean 5-10 years down the road before we get a second phase. Although I do know they're looking at shoulder options for buses and that type of thing. I just want you to know that I'm still trying to adamantly support in the project that it goes all the way to downtown St. Pete, and I know Chairman Rice is doing the same. So that's one update. US 19, the FDOT staff presented the agency's policy on complete streets. They want to do this on US 19 and all of the other streets that they manage. As time goes on, as projects are redone, they want to have bike lanes and better sidewalks and all of those types of things that fall into the complete streets model as funding and time becomes available. I think that'll be exceptionally important as we are coming up. They're getting ready to do or in the process of doing a study on Alt 19, and so they'll need to be looking at those kind of issues on Alt 19, which is very narrow in some spots. So that those updates that they might do to Alt 19 over the next 5 or 10 years may dramatically change with this new policy, as well as US 19. So it's something to watch. The other thing is that MPO has sent a letter to FDOT asking them to delay designing the overpasses for North County on US 19. FDOT has not responded yet, so they are still working on the design phase of these North County interchanges, and the Pasco MPO is coming to our meeting in June to talk about all of this, and that they have voted to remove all of their overpasses from the US 19 project. So we don't really know where all of this is at. There's a lot of political fighting going on about who wants MPO being improved or not improved. I mean, MPO, US 19 being improved or not improved, and the way it should be done. So pretty impacting stuff for our community and our county. So let's keep an eye on that. And MPO and PSTA will be meeting on July 29th, as you know, in a joint workshop. Whit will talk to us, Whit Blanton from MPO will talk to us about the performance-based outcome-driven planning process. This concept would provide MPO with a better prioritization method that will properly weigh investments in public transit with other transportation modes. As follow-up to an earlier request, the MPO and PSTA will both be asked to support board member participation in Transportation for America's leadership program as well. So lots of big things going on, and if you can attend or watch these meetings, I think it would be beneficial for those who are not on the board.
Madam Chair,
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to make everyone on the board aware that on Friday, Whit Blanton is the keynote at our Tiger Bay luncheon, and it's all about transportation, so that should be very interesting as well.
Very good.
Madam Chair,
Uh-huh.
if I may comment on one thing that was brought up at the MPO meeting, there was a brief statement by one of the people there talking about that DOT is continuing to move forward with a pedestrian overpass at Harn
Oh, yeah, that's right. I
Boulevard
forgot about that.
on 19. In discussing that with her after the meeting, part of the story is that they are looking at, rather than putting it at Harn, to flexing it someplace north of Harn in order to save some money on relocating the variable message sign. And I find that a little ironic because at previous DOT's meetings they have talked about how people will walk maybe 200 feet out of their way
To cross.
but otherwise they'll just find a way to cross otherwise. And it was at that same meeting that they were talking about the DOT policy for complete streets to recognize pedestrian.
Safe.
So I would urge our representative to the MPO to have DOT recall the two resolutions that PSTA sent in, and I think 206 and 07, to ask that DOT's 19 project be designed to be supportive of transit. So those were a couple comments.
And you're right, and I apologize for missing that. They were talking about at these intersections, these North County intersections that they're designing overpasses for. We've been talking a lot about how do people cross the road and what's the best way, and they were showing us all these different options, whether it's a pedestrian overpass or an underpass, if you will, and other different options. And it appeared to me that they were really thinking about some of these things in the after, rather than designing the project to accommodate. And so there was discussion about that, and I will ask Brad to provide me with those resolutions that Bill is referring to, and we should probably look at that and maybe do a letter from PSTA to the MPO and FDOT about that, because there was concern expressed at the meeting about the way they were going about this.
Okay.
And I think the problem is they're designing US 19 so early. They've looked at their design options, and then when the final building of that piece of it comes so late, so much later, that these issues are afterthoughts. It's not a design and then build it right away like you would do in your own city. So, okay. Any other questions on what's going on at MPO? Alrighty. Now we have the MPO's local coordinating board. Patty Johnson.
The local coordinating board met on May the 17th at the offices of the Pinellas County Planning Department in downtown Clearwater. And the highlights of that meeting include, but are not limited to, a presentation by the Pinellas County Schools Homeless Emergency Action Team. It's called HEAT. And this has to do with the children that are homeless and getting them to the schools where they started and keeping them in one school. About how many school children are homeless, what transportation and other challenges that they face. An update from the American Cancer Society about their transportation services for those undergoing cancer treatment. The FDOT staff advised the LCB of their efforts to create an interactive map of all the 5,310 funded agencies with a profile of the trips that they provide. Approval of annual agency agreements, funding allocations, rate model, and the Transportation Disadvantaged Service Plan update. Ross Silver's advised the group of what PSTA is going to propose in 2 new grant applications. The Mobility Enhancement Grant from the Florida Transportation Disadvantaged Commission and the Rides to Wellness Grant from the Federal Transit Administration. The LCB created a subcommittee to provide input on this grant. Thanks to PSTA's leadership, we are bringing more dollars to Pinellas County for the transportation disadvantaged. And not one meeting goes by that we are not reminded or told of all of the people that do not have transportation, that need transportation, that don't know how to get there and to do it. So our teaching is of great importance to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Any questions or comments for Patty? Okay. We will move to consent agenda. There are 5 items on consent agenda: the board meeting minutes, the Ulmerton Road Park and Ride, AV equipment, transportation disadvantaged contracts, and the nomination of some track members. Are there any items to be pulled? All right.
Madam Chairman, I would move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Is all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Move on to our action items. The first item is the 2015 annual audit. I will turn it over to Debbie.
Thank you very much. Thanks for all the PowerPoint.
Madam Chair, as you can see, Debbie is our Chief Financial Officer and not our independent auditor. The auditor, as she'll explain, they are going to try to be here a little bit later, but go ahead and explain.
Thank you. I am Debbie Leas, the Chief Financial Officer here at PSTA, and I'm very pleased today to be able to do this presentation. Clifton Larson Allen is running a bit behind schedule and got detained, so they will be here a little bit later. Should any of the board members have any questions that I cannot answer, or they want to ask directly to the auditors.
Question.
This is the first year.
A question real quick. I'm sorry. I apologize. Are they coming this morning?
They are coming.
We were going to postpone, but Debbie wanted to go ahead and present.
Why won't, I mean, if they're going to be here, why don't we just wait till they get here? Let them present
I'm
it.
not sure what time they will be here, but they will be here later.
I'm just a little bit worried we might lose a quorum, but
Okay. But I mean, it's important to hear from
We
our
were
independent
originally
auditor.
going to postpone, but there was a concern about if they could even, if they would get here. I mean, we're already pretty late.
Yeah, I think the report is a positive one, so I'm not,
Yeah.
but I still think it's important that, we get a chance to have them speak, so hopefully we'll make some time for them to, all right.
Yep.
Proceed?
It might be more efficient to see if they come and then put it in.
we can do that. We can wait. We can put this to the end of the action items, if you please.
Madam Chair, may I ask respectfully, what is the concern if we postpone it? It's an audit, correct?
Correct.
What is the concern if we postpone it until we can hear from them?
Oh, I don't. It's just that keep on schedule, and it's been a tag team with the two of us to do the presentation. So, in their absence, I thought we could go ahead while we still had everybody here. But we can postpone.
It is an action item. The Finance Committee did hear from the auditors at last week's meeting and got the full presentation, but I'm perfectly comfortable delaying it into the meeting to the end of the action items and seeing if they're here by whenever we get to that, probably around 10 o'clock or so.
Madam Chair? Well, considering the comments that Brad just made and in an effort to be prudent about the way in which we operate, I would suggest that it might be a good idea to just postpone it and hear from them. And frankly, I find it a bit odd, given that this is a really important issue, that I know life happens and things happen, but it is their responsibility to come before us, and I'd like to hear from them.
It's fine, we will wait.
We'll see if they,
So are you suggesting we postpone it to another meeting?
Well, yes,
Okay.
I think, I'm only one voice, but I agree with Commissioner Eggers that it is a bit odd. That's not, respectfully, I say,
No, you're right. They report to us.
Yeah, you're not an independent outside person.
Understood.
Mhm. Yes.
I concur with my colleagues on the left. Either move it later today, and if they're not here later today in time, move it to another meeting.
So that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
Let's just move it to at the end of action items, and if they do not come, then we'll postpone it to the next meeting.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Debbie. Someone remind me to go back to that. All right, item B is the security training services. Brad?
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, good morning. I'll go ahead and talk about this item, and then I've got both Mike Loss and Debbie Leas who can answer any other questions about it. I want to thank the Finance Committee who has reviewed this a couple of times. This is an action item to approve of 2 consultant contracts to perform training, security training for our own employees, as well as develop a tabletop exercise to conduct with first responders in the community, fire departments, police departments, etc. The Finance Committee was helpful to me in reviewing this item, and since this is a grant-funded training program by the Transportation Security Administration, we are specifically designing these contract awards to be narrowly tailored to only be used for this training services. Again, the training is for our bus drivers and mechanics on security-related, being aware of security issues. 2 4-hour training sessions are funded by the grant, and then this development of this training for first responders and a functional drill to be happen in the next 2 or 3 years. So the Finance Committee did review this item, recommends its approval. It is very specifically for this training. If there's money left over in the grant or other things the PSTA would need to be done, we would have to come back to the board to get that approval to do anything but this training.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Did you want Mike to give a presentation?
No.
No. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Questions for staff?
I just want to mention that the Finance Committee unanimously approved recommendation of these 2 contracts to the full board.
Okay. Any questions for staff? All
Full
right.
approval.
We have to go to public comment, please.
Oh, sorry.
Thought there was something on security training. Maybe not. Okay, this is a public hearing. Anyone that would like to come forward and speak to this, please feel free to do so. I know. That's all right. Don't worry about it. Doesn't matter.
Should have stated my name before. Tom Rask, Unincorporated, Pinellas County. I thought I gave you guys a card, but perhaps I didn't. Just to organize my notes here. Mr. Barclay mentioned that this contract was unanimously approved in the Finance Committee. I just want to note that on other issues, when it comes to bus purchases, he's gone against the majority. So I would ask that you at least ask some tough questions here about this contract, because as I pointed out in my email, there are some security issues here at PSTA, at least from the taxpayer's perspective. I mentioned that at your January meeting, you hired a sheriff's deputy at taxpayer expense, and this person, if you look at the video, which I have not been able to because it's exempt from the public records law, but I observed it, this deputy sat behind the counter and played on his phone pretty much the whole meeting, and we taxpayers were paying for that. That's not security. I mean, as I said in my email, the Unabomber himself could have walked in here and set off a bomb. So as part of approving this contract, please make sure that you make a statement, that the board makes a statement that all security employees and contractors must be taught alertness while on duty. Otherwise, we're just paying for security. It becomes a block checking exercise. I did this, I did this, I did this, but you haven't actually accomplished security or safety. And those are my only comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rask. Anyone else that wanted to come forward and speak to this item? Okay, I'll go back to Brad. I think you had maybe some comments about that issue.
Oh, well, Madam Chair, I mean, I would certainly agree if that was a concern. We have had security here at the PSTA meetings, and I am very appreciative of the Sheriff's Department that they have not charged us for that, for providing a deputy. It's not an excuse for them if they weren't paying attention, but I see James Bradford. I think perhaps maybe you talked to him before. We'll make sure that we talk to them when they come again.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve this?
To approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any final comments? I'll start down at this end. Anyone? Anyone on this end? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Our next item is the 2017 Program of Projects that was discussed in the Planning Committee. Debbie, welcome back.
Good morning again. The Federal Transit Administration requires that PSTA publish a program of projects that we will be using with their federal apportionment funds. We held a public hearing right here at PSTA on May 18th. We did receive one comment there, and that was from Ms. Hazelton, and she requested that PSTA consider purchasing less expensive, smaller shuttle vehicles. And I would like to say that in our program of projects, we actually do have money set aside for that. The program of projects this year is a little bit different than we've presented in the past in that the 2015 numbers were actually, we only got a portion of our funds last year, and by the time the federal government got around to giving us the balance of the funding, they shut down the system they use to input a new software system. So we had to postpone bringing this to the board until this point in time. Of course, it is an election year, so we have our full apportionment of the 2016 funds all in once. So this is a listing of the program of projects. It is consistent with supporting the mission of PSTA. It includes money for buses, not by any specific type. It includes money for passenger amenities, so we are very customer-centric focused. We also have funds in there to support our workforce through training, and we also have quite a bit of money in there for technology improvements. And what we're asking today is that you approve the program or projects that we may be able to apply for this funding. Our deadline for application is June 30th, so that we may be able to receive the funds starting with our new fiscal year. And that is the action item before you.
Madam Chair.
Hang on just one second. Okay. Commissioner Welch, any comments from the Planning Chair? Planning Chair?
No, Ms. Leo's covered it. I would just reemphasize that it doesn't specify the types of replacement buses to be purchased. I do have a question after.
Okay. Going on to questions for staff. Commissioner Long?
Yes. Debbie, it may be in here and I'm just missing it, but I was very concerned, and several of my colleagues on the County Commission are concerned as well, about making sure that one of those smaller vehicles is in the Lealman community, because that area has no public transportation. That is our focus for our new CRA that we have there. And I think I can speak that we all agree that that is a real necessity for that community, for them to be able to get to, they don't even have a grocery store there. So to be able to have public transportation in that community is essential for their quality of life. Is one of those buses earmarked for that? I'd spoken to Brad about it earlier, and He seemed to think so. Did I misunderstand you?
Brad?
This is the capital grant to buy bus shelters and buses. It doesn't specifically require us to say where the buses will run, but we are, as Debbie mentioned, we are purchasing smaller shuttle-like vehicles that very well could run in the Lowman community. Our planning department is working on a service plan on how we might do that if funding is identified.
May I have a follow-up? So at what point in our process, or what is the appropriate mechanism for me to bring that up again?
Later in the meeting, Cassandra is going to be walking through the service changes and plans that we have for different areas of the county coming up over the next year, and I think you should bring it up then.
Okay, thank you, I will.
Any questions from anyone else on this end? Okay. Commissioner Welch.
Just on the background, the roll forward piece, I want to make sure I'm understanding it. The FY 2015 roll forward dollars looks like maybe $7 million. Were those dollars expensed, and this is just a reporting issue?
No,
or
they
are
were
those
not
still sitting in the
expensed.
bank?
They're still sitting with FTA until we bring this forward.
2015?
For 2015. Yes, they did this across the country where they only apportioned about 8/12 of the funds, and then later in the year they apportioned the rest of it. But as I mentioned at that time, they also shut down the system to allow us to go ahead and do anything with those funds.
So how do those funds tie into our bus purchases?
Well, they will be funding our bus purchases, and we've got some buses that will be coming in, I think, this fiscal year. They'll come in before the end of the fiscal year. And those funds will help to go towards those bus purchases and the future bus purchases.
And we're sure that the cash will come forward?
Absolutely. And the way the Federal Transit Administration works is you basically spend the money and get reimbursed on that, usually within 3 days.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Hang on just a second. Bill?
The question I had, just to focus a little bit more on the vehicles, the smaller vehicles, I think I recall that the vehicles that we had purchased, there were significant maintenance problems with them.
Yes.
When we are going forward, are we looking at a different vendor for smaller vehicles?
Yes.
So that would...
Yes, the vehicles that we purchased back in 2011 have not been very reliable, as a kind of understatement. They're all parked out back. And we are purchasing what we think is a much better, heavier duty, smaller bus. Still smaller, so it can go into the neighborhoods in northern Pinellas County and perhaps in other areas, but a different manufacturer and a different design. Should be better for us.
Patty? You raise your hand.
No, I'm
good.
just,
Okay. Anyone else on this end have any questions? Janet?
I'm going to wait
Okay.
on my question because it
Okay.
doesn't even make sense to me, so I know I'm not
Okay.
thinking it right.
Brian?
Thank you.
Thank you. Brad, just a quick question, follow up on the vehicles. Are we looking at more cutaways, or are they 30-foot Gillies?
The small buses I'm referring to, and Henry is there, he can answer specific, but they are cutaways. I don't know if they're called cutaways. Henry, maybe you tell me what the kind that we're looking at buying.
Oh, they're smaller vehicles. Is Henry coming up? Okay.
They're not the 30-foot Gillies.
Morning, Henry Lukasik, Director of Maintenance. The vehicles that we're considering are considered cutaways, heavier chassis.
What manufacturer?
Right now, either a Global or a Turtle Top.
Okay. I need a definition on cutaway.
me
Yeah,
too.
I was just wondering that too.
A
What does that
cutaway
mean?
is a industry term. Basically, it is a chassis of a truck type, and then the body, the passenger body, gets put on that. That's why they call it a cutaway.
Versus what else?
Yeah, what's a regular bus?
A regular bus, like our 29-footers and our heavy buses are just called transit coaches.
Well, I know, but
A regular bus is built from the bottom
it's an
up.
open hole question.
A regular PSTA bus is built from the bottom up as a transit bus. It never was anything else. These cutaways or body-on-chassis vehicles that run in northern Pinellas County that you see at the airport are truck chassis by Ford or Chevy that they take away the truck part and they put on the area where the passengers sit. They do that with RVs and other, it's just another kind of makeup. That does not, the useful life of those kind of all those kind of vehicles is less than a bus that's built from a heavy-duty bus is built from the ground up.
Real quick.
Yep, Dave.
Go
No, go ahead.
No.
You done, Brian?
Yeah, my concern is they're not going to be much better. None of those cutaways are very good. It's not. But I mean, we've got X number of funds to buy them with. I mean, they're just not very good. They're 5-year throwaway vehicles.
Yeah. Well, that's what we've learned so far. Thank you, Brian. Dave?
That was really what I was going to ask. I mean, are the qualities of these improving so that you may only have to replace it one time for, so you have 2 replacements versus a bus? Or are we looking at, a third replacement during that same schedule? But, we're not talking about increasing the service here. You talked about, Brad, having more drivers, and that's the real cost item. But really replacing the big buses with the small buses.
Yeah.
How many times will we have to replace it in a useful life of a large bus? I mean, and what's that cost? So, we talked a little bit about including that in our analysis, as we look at bus choices. So I want to continue to encourage that as we look at new alternatives. I think it's important.
And let me just add, on my end, I agree with those things that have been said, but, I think you mentioned that we're approving this program of projects with an overall number for vehicle replacements. It could be 100 different vehicles in this number, because that has not been decided, correct? And you were bringing it to us in this format to just get that part approved. But I think you can see by all the questions from everyone that the board wants to know what kind of vehicles we're buying. So as much as you're trying to make things simple, but I think we probably at some point going to, at least at the committee level, are going to want to talk about these vehicles. So I just say that to you as something to ponder on versus bringing us one number to cover all vehicles. I think we're all more curious than that. So I just say that we do need to open for public comment. So anyone that I don't have any cards, but anyone that would like to come speak to the program of projects is more than welcome to do so. Okay. Seeing or hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the program of projects?
So moved.
Second.
Any final comments? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item D is our succession planning policy. This was covered in the executive committee.
If I may, do we have to read the resolution that went along with those?
That would have been nice. Sorry. Before we voted on it?
Well, you didn't
Yeah, we approved the agenda item.
approve the agenda item, but you have to make a motion to approve the resolution.
Okay.
It's Resolution 1605, a resolution of the Pinellas St. Coast Transit Authority authorizing the filing of an application with the Department of Transportation, United States of America, for Sections 5307, 5337, and 5339 grants and or grant amendments under the Federal Transit Administration Act of 1964 as amended.
Can I have a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion or comments on that resolution? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Are there any other resolutions I need to be aware of? Let me know. Okay, succession planning policy. We have Trish
Collins with our HR department.
Morning, everyone.
Good
Trish
morning.
Collins, Staffing and Development Manager in the Human Resources Department. I'm speaking on an action item today. We're asking that the PSTA board approve the succession planning policy that you have in your packets. We did recently present this policy to the executive committee, and it was unanimously recommended to bring it before the board. This policy provides that HR will periodically assess the key components of the succession plan. That's our key positions, our vacancy risk, our high potential employees, and our emergency interim plan, and provide a fully updated succession plan to the CEO twice annually. The policy also provides several ways that the board will continuously be updated on recommended short and long-term succession plans for the CEO position to ensure that the board is informed and prepared for any emergencies or long-term vacancies in the CEO role. It also provides that PSTA University will continue to provide appropriate training in all departments, and also establishes Leadership PSTA as our premier professional development program within the agency. So in conclusion, again, I would just like to ask for your approval on this succession planning policy.
Okay, this was discussed at the executive committee. Commissioner Long, was there anything you wanted to add to what Trish had to say that was discussed at the executive committee?
Only to let the rest of the board know that I think we all were very pleasantly surprised how incredibly thorough the succession planning was, because not only did it focus on the CEO and the top administrative positions, it really took a look at the whole entire agency and provided real opportunities for career paths for almost everyone employed by PSTA. On top of that, there were some very impressive measurements in there to assure that if you're in a position, you're being trained properly and you're also being positioned for the next step in the organization. And I just thought it was remarkable how no stone was left unturned. And I think we all know that in the past couple of evaluations of Brad, the lack of a succession plan for the leadership was a huge issue. And so, Brad, congratulations, because you not only talked about the leadership team, but went through the entire organization. And there are specific measurements and objectives in there for human resources to update them every year so they don't get stale and we don't have to start this whole process all over again in, 3 or 4 or 5 years. So I'm just thrilled and think it's a very big step towards taking the organization into the next chapter of whatever it is that it will be. So we voted on it unanimously, and I would like to move approval of the succession planning as Trish has so eloquently outlined.
I have to go to public comment.
I know you do, but I'm just saying that that's where I'd like to take us after public comment.
Okay. Are there any questions of our staff? Start down at this end. Okay, this end. Joe?
I'd just like to add to what Commissioner Long said. I also was very pleased with the way the plan was formatted. I was pleased with the way that we have not only the top-level executives in 4 different categories that could move into an chief executive role if necessary, but also that we have the ability to continue to train and prepare executives at all levels to move up into positions when vacancies occur, and that we have a thorough and complete plan to make sure that there will be no reduction in service or gap in performance in the event that a top-level executive were to leave PSTA. It's an excellent plan. I think it's very worthy of consideration by the board and approval by the board, and we're pleased with the way this plan was put together. Thank you very much for you and your staffers.
I thought I saw Ken's hand.
Yeah, I would just add this does check a box. It's been on Brad's evaluations for a number of years. And Trish, we also had a preview of this either at planning committee or at the board. I don't remember where it was, but we did have a preview of it, so I'm very supportive as well. Thank you.
Any other questions at this end? Okay, we will go to public comment. I do not have any green cards, but certainly anyone that would like to come forward and speak to this item is welcome. All right, seeing or hearing none, we'll close the public comment portion.
Move approval.
Second.
Who was the seconder down here?
I was.
Multiple.
Or, I was one of them.
Take your pick.
Take a pick.
Any final comments? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, we are at the end of our action items. Is the auditors here?
They're not here yet. So
We will hold them off until the end of informational, and at that time, if they're not here, we will postpone to the next meeting.
that sounds good.
All right, so now we're under informational items. I'll just remind the public that is here, we will allow public comment under these items. First item is the Sustainability Capital Improvement Program. That was covered under the planning and I believe also finance. So I will turn it over to Brad.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. This item, I'm very thankful that both the Finance and, well, a number of the Finance Committee members and Planning Committee members saw this presentation a week ago together. And so my objective today is to give you some additional information that we have collected since the meeting, that we have put online as well. If you can look on the screen and see just a couple different additional slides that we've added based on comments made at the committees. And then we had a really good meeting or discussion with Phil Compton and Frank Jackalone from the Sierra Club since our last board meeting, and talked about that. So I want to provide some additional information. My goals of the presentation are, again, to have the board feel comfortable that they have the necessary information they need to make a decision and take a vote next month at your June meeting on the types of buses that PSTA needs to buy. And third, that the board, we all feel like PSTA is doing what it can to be a sustainable organization and help the community fight climate change. What we are recommending, as I told you last month, as we've discussed multiple times in the past, is we are recommending that the board not adopt a bus technology policy on the specific types of buses, but we adopt a sustainable, higher level policy based on the triple bottom line of a sustainability approach, that being environmental, economic, and social. We have been talking about the types of buses a lot. I look back, and of the last 12 PSTA board meetings, we've talked about this 9 different times. What we haven't talked about is is the broad perspective of the PSTA organization. We focused very heavily on the 210 buses the PSTA owns, but PSTA as an organization actually operates or funds 454 vehicles around the county. Not all of those are necessarily with the goal of improving the environment. We operate 100, we fund 100 taxi cab sedans. We operate 60 vans through our DART program. The DART program is incredibly important to our sustainability approach, but it is a social responsibility of ours because those folks have no other way to get around, and they need transportation, as Commissioner Johnson often says, or else they won't have any transportation. We also fund 25 different Jolly Trolley vehicles, including a CNG trolley. We fund 7 Looper trolleys in downtown St. Petersburg. So in total, it's a much broader fleet and impact on the PSTA services than just the specific buses that we operate. What I'm going to be coming to you next month is a recommendation that's a higher level than the specific bus technology. The reason I'm doing this is for something that Commissioner Janet Long and others have said is technology is changing rapidly. We had a workshop a couple weeks ago where we talked specifically about that, how fast technology is changing. You've gotten emails that from folks saying that the electric bus technology, the batteries are getting better and changing. It seems like every week there's a different announcement on that. So what I'm recommending that the board take is a higher level approach that allows us to be flexible as the new technologies come forward. We would recommend that we would continue replacing our oldest vehicles on schedule with newer, reliable vehicles. For the time being, my recommendation would be that we put in our budget to replace the oldest diesel buses in our fleet with new diesel buses in our fleet. That speaks, I'm going to talk about that, but that speaks to our financial sustainability. Buying diesel buses, at least over the next 5 years, is the way in which we can have a sustainable financial and operating plan. And then last but not least, and this is the point that I want to stress the most, is that it is most important for PSTA to maintain the service to our riders. That, I believe, is also the way we can be the most environmentally beneficial to the community, is by carrying people, having them not drive their cars and instead ride the bus. I've suggested, and I'm going to suggest, that we adopt the board adopt a policy of constantly improving our fuel economy. And this chart that is in your packet and on the screen shows in the middle that we currently have a fleet-wide fuel economy of 4.45 miles a gallon. That will increase to 4.6 later this year with the decision you've already made, and then shows different scenarios, no matter what scenario, whether we buy diesels, whether we buy hybrids, or whether we buy electric buses, you can see that the miles per gallon increases and emissions decrease. If you don't burn as much fossil fuels, your emissions will decrease. You can see that on the percentages at the bottom of the chart, actually emissions decrease more than the fuel economy increases because of new regulations that the federal government has put on diesel engines that reduce their emissions even more than they improve their fuel economy. Switching now to financial sustainability. PSTA, again, operates 210 buses that I'm going to focus on, but we operate a very broad fleet of 464 vehicles that are going to be propelled by different fuels. That's a given. And PSTA's financial sustainability cannot commit to one single technology, not that we would even want to recommend that in this time of changing technologies. After the last board meeting, after our last discussion, I know most of you have also received emails since then. There's been a lot of open questions about the cost of the different options. I get emails about different costing, and we went back and we investigated this to try to get very specific cost information. And I've shared the information that we received in all gory detail, as Commissioner Gerard wanted, during our one-on-ones that we've had with many of you. On the screen now, or in your packets, are two different ways we've looked at the costs of operating the different technologies. Both the initial capital cost, the upfront purchase price, and then the life cycle cost, which is very important. And at the Planning and Finance Committees last Wednesday, we talked a lot about this. On the initial capital cost, there's been comments, even the comment made earlier by the citizen earlier in this meeting, that the cost has come down substantially on the electric buses, and so they are comparable in price to the hybrid buses that PSTA has been buying. When you actually factor in the base price of the bus plus the items that we need to buy to make it a PSTA bus, the fare box, the cameras, the Wi-Fi, the real-time, the hybrid electric technology, that does not turn out to be the case. In addition, for both CNG and an electric bus, you need capital infrastructure, one-time purchase of either a compressing station for CNG or charging stations for the electric buses. So you can see that The price for the electric bus of $749,000 is somewhat comparable to the bottom line price of $697,000 for the hybrid bus, but the full cost of implementing a electric bus is about $1.48 million versus $475,000 for a diesel bus. What's more important, though, is the life cycle cost of these vehicles. And that's what we've scrutinized as well. And that's shown on the bottom. Our initial life cycle cost model that we ran is shown there on the bottom of the screen. It uses the upfront capital costs for one bus. And then the two most important variables in the life cycle cost analysis are the maintenance costs of the different vehicles projected out for the next 15 years and the price of diesel fuel projected out for the next 15 years. On the first one, there's been comments made about and different projections by different organizations on the maintenance costs for vehicles out into the future. So after the last board meeting, I contacted some colleagues of mine out in California that operate the most number of electric buses. They sent me a report that they had done by the U.S. Department of Energy on their vehicles that was an apples-to-apples comparison of the maintenance costs. And I feel much more comfortable that we've gotten much smarter on this, on what we could expect with an electric bus, a CNG, or the diesel buses. The other variable is what we've done some further analysis since last meeting. And I'm about to show you some new slides that you don't have in your packet, but they are available online. The question came up with the planning committee, well, what's the price of fuel going to be moving out for the next 15 years? And I can honestly say that I know a lot about transportation, but I do not have any clue what the price of diesel fuel is going to be for the next 15 years. We talked at the meeting that obviously the life cycle cost of a vehicle changes substantially depending on where the price of fuel goes. I think Commissioner Welch did some math because he is an accountant, and he figured out somewhere around $3 a gallon or something that it might break even. When we met with Phil earlier, we talked about looking over the last 10 years. And so the chart that I'm showing up on the screen is the price of diesel fuel that PSTA has paid over the last 10 years. And you can see it is all over the place. It has recently got down to its lowest in the last 10 years at 90-something cents a gallon. And it spiked at over $4 a gallon back in 2008.
Brad, when you find a stopping point, Commissioner Welch has a question for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, my eyes are not what they used to be. Now, I re-downloaded what's online, and I don't have that slide. So where is that slide online?
I'm sorry. Right now, email marketing and asking them.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
They just haven't posted it yet.
Can they email it to us?
Can you email it to us so that we can access it? Because I agree, we can't, look at our age, we can't read all the way up there. That just ain't going to happen.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So Brad, I was trying to ask you this a couple of slides ago, but in your calculations, you may remember that around about last October, we were meeting, and I asked you if you had had any opportunity to talk with the folks at Duke about potentially partnering with them to help offset some of the cost of the electric battery charging stations.
Yes.
Were you ever able to follow up with them and see how far down the road we might be able to get with that idea?
We did follow up with them several times, and we're going to try again. At least that was the commitment I made to Phil, and perhaps I know that he said that the Sierra Club has had some more positive interactions with Duke recently, and maybe working together, we can maybe get Duke to be a partner in this, especially if we get a charging station that they could put their name on in downtown St. Petersburg, perhaps right in front of their building. That might be pretty.
Well, I
pretty
just
nice.
asked that question because I believe there are several of us that have some nice relationships with the folks at Duke, and I think we all know they have been making an effort to be really good corporate citizens, and I'd like an opportunity to really find out what we can do, because that could have a really big impact on our final decision, right?
It could, yes.
Yeah.
Here's the revised part.
I'm not getting, why don't we let Brad finish his presentation, and then we'll get to all of our questions, because
Yeah.
I think we're going to miss the point of what you're trying to say.
Okay, well, again, I brought this information to you based on our last meeting. We looked at what the price of diesel fuel has done. I don't know if my eyes are getting worse too, so I don't know if I can read it. The issue is that diesel fuel, as we all know, all kinds of fuel have fluctuated substantially. And on this chart, diesel fuel has been at a price that the electric buses over their life would calculate out to save money. And also on this chart are lots of times over the last 10 years that buying diesel buses would have saved money. The first life cycle cost analysis that I presented to the committees last week assumed $1.88 per gallon for diesel fuel. That is down toward the bottom of my chart, $1.88. It is substantially more than what we're paying today. Today it's fluctuating. Last week it's been fluctuating around $1.25 to $1.40 a gallon. So we assumed $1.88. Is it going to go over $1.88 or average that over $1.88 over the next 15 years? I don't know. The average over the last 10 years, and this is sort of a shot in the dark about where it might be for the next 10 years, the average over the last 10 years has been $2.55 a gallon. So again, this is a new slide that until you get it emailed, you won't see at your places.
I got it.
But we decided to run two different scenarios. As Mr. Compton said, as I think we discussed earlier, I'm appreciative of Commissioner Welch and the county commissioners for considering of funding a charging station, a one-time cost of a charging station in downtown St. Petersburg, that at $349,000, that would be the capital. That would be part of the solution to the capital infrastructure required for a pilot program with electric buses. So I just played out on the top of the screen a scenario where PSTA would buy 2 electric buses. The BP settlement funds would fund the charging station, and diesel fuel price averaged what it has averaged over the last 10 years for 2 vehicles. And you can see the bottom line is the electric bus life cycle cost analysis would be about $2.4 million, and the diesel bus would be about $2.1 million. In total, that those 2 electric buses would cost over the life of them for both operating and upfront capital about $300,000 more than the comparable diesel bus. Then I sort of did another analysis out in the future, sort of trying to see where it might break even. Did the bottom part of the chart shows 10 buses, $3.30 a gallon average, which probably, in my opinion, it might be a little high, but it has been there before. And the BP settlement funding the charging station. And at that point, at $3.30 a gallon, if that is where fuel goes for the next 10 years, the diesel will cost more than the electric buses would cost for 10. A little bit more than $11.7 million, and just about the same, $11.7 million for the electric buses. So again, that's why, I think this speaks to the same issue that we were talking about earlier. There's a lot of unknowns. Technology is changing. The batteries are getting better on these vehicles. They are not where they need to be to run all of our buses in this way. That's why I think it would be great if we could partner with the county on these BP funds funding a charging station, maybe partner with Duke Energy that they could help install it, and that would save us money. And we could pilot these vehicles with two electric buses in a pilot program. The recommendation that I'm making, again, that the board adopt a policy of a fuel economy goal, and then that gives staff the flexibility to look at this every single year, see what the price of diesel is projected for the next year, and make adjustments. Henry Lukasik, my maintenance director, can come to me and say, Brad, diesel fuel prices at $4 a gallon. This pencils out that maybe we should increase our electric vehicles. Brad, I don't know, they've discovered new oil somewhere else and diesel has dropped to 50 cents a gallon. Let's go buy a whole bunch of diesel buses. This allows us the flexibility in the future. As long as we're improving fuel economy and lowering emissions, that gives us much more flexibility. Last is sort of the main issue. What I think is the most important function for PSTA is providing reliable service to our customers. The reason I am not recommending at this time to budget for hybrid buses or budget for all electric buses is because we won't have the necessary funds over the next 5 years to replace buses on time. So this chart that is in your original packet, and I presented last week, tries to speak to that by saying if we decide to go down the road of hybrid buses or electric buses or a mix of those, we won't be able to replace buses on time, and our reliable fleet will go down from its current fleet of 210 to something less. If we don't make any decision, which is at the line number 2, we won't buy any, if we don't replace any of the 70 buses we need to, we will only have 140 reliable buses and not 210. That will reduce ridership. That will get more people coming to the podium complaining about buses breaking down. And it will keep ridership going down. That's the most important environmental benefit and I think social benefit of PSTA's existence, is carrying riders, carrying customers so they do not drive their cars. This is a fairly simple way of explaining that. Yes, PSTA's fleet of 210 buses generates about 24,000 tons of annual greenhouse gas emissions, but the 14 million rides that we carry, this year we're projected to carry a little bit less than 14. The last couple of years we've carried more than 14 million. Those 14 million, even if not all of them, but some of them drive their cars instead because there's no reliable service for them, they would generate 25,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions. PSTA is a net benefit as far as lowering emissions, no matter what kind of vehicles we operate, to the community because we give people an option to driving their cars. So again, the math that I produced on this final slide, or this final analysis, shows that if we can provide the reliable service with 210 buses that we need, we can carry the most number of passengers and therefore have the best environmental benefit and a financially sustainable program for our community. We would potentially have a net benefit of 3,600 tons a year taking out of the air of greenhouse gas emissions. If we go down the road of another path that we don't have a financially sustainable plan, don't have enough sustainable, reliable buses, ridership will go down and our net benefit to the community will go down. Commissioner Welch asked me during our one-on-one that we had, well, Brad, this is a change in what you're recommending compared to where we've been going in the past. We've been buying hybrid buses in the past. What has changed? And as I told him, I didn't think I had a great answer then. I don't know if I have a great answer now, but something has changed. We are now no longer able to rely on federal funds to buy these buses, buy these replacement buses. Without earmarks, with substantially less dollars coming from the federal government, we still get dollars, but not as much as we were able to tap in the past. We're having to make a decision to use our local dollars, our property tax funds and reserve funds to buy these replacement buses.
This is a capital expense, but it almost acts like an operating expense because PSTA buys buses all the time. We are replacing vehicles all the time. Every single year, for the last 30 years of PSTA's existence, and for the next 30 years, we will have action items before the board to buy replacement buses to keep the service running. And it's a new day here at PSTA where we're having to look at our own funds that have historically been used to run the services that we provide, to pay the bus drivers and pay for the fuel to drive down the road and pick up passengers. We've heard this morning calls for improved service. There have been a number of articles in the papers, both in Hillsborough County and Pinellas County, all the time about how we can make the service better for our customers. Since my car has been not having very good air conditioning lately, I've been riding the bus. And I know the passengers on the bus want the bus to come more frequently. And no one that I've been standing at the bus shelter with, waiting for my bus to show up, has asked whether it's going to be a hybrid or an electric or a diesel bus. They just want a bus to come faster and pick them up and take them to where they need to go. That is what I hope we can focus our local funds on providing. Hopefully increased service to our customers, to our riders. More service, more frequently at night and on the weekend. That is what the customers want. New services in Lellman or transportation disadvantage focused services, etc., is what our ridership requires. And if they are not driving their car and they are riding the bus, they are actually improving the environment. So again, this is what you're going to see next month. It's an informational item today. It's a couple of recommendations I'm going to take a higher level view of this. Not commit to any one technology, but commit to a goal of improving our fuel economy over time. Always improving our fuel economy. Keep applying and trying to come up with partners to test these technologies and implement these technologies in any possible way we can, whether it's federal grants for electric buses or hybrids like we have in right now that we're applying for, or with the one-time funds, maybe a partnership with Duke Energy. Anything we can do to, again, that will increase our fuel economy, that will lower emissions even further, and we can test that. Below the line is sort of a different recommendation that the executive committee talked about and I've talked with a number of you about. As I said, last year we took 3 different votes, and they were tough votes and just on this subject, and the final vote to buy those 7 hybrids was an 8-7 squeaker. We've had 9 out of the last 12 meetings where we've had presentations about this topic. Several of you have suggested, well, is there a better way? Is there a way that we can have a higher level discussion while keeping informed on what kind of vehicles we're buying and always trying to move the agency forward? So it's really an option. We can keep having these discussions, but what I'm suggesting is that we commit ourselves to having 1 vote a year on the capital improvement program. I would present to the board that this is how we're improving fuel economy, this is how emissions, these are the kind of buses we're planning to buy, but you would take 1 vote when you approve the CIP, not 3 or 4. If new technology comes around, which I'm sure it will, I don't even know what it might be, we can stay apprised of that and then adjust our CIP when that becomes available. So that's sort of a little bit separate from the buses, but it's an idea I think will help the board and the organization be flexible, but maybe be more efficient in their discussions about this. I would glad to take any questions. I'm sure we can have a good discussion about it today, and then we'll have another discussion and a vote next month.
Thank you, Brad. As the planning committee chair, Ken, do you have anything you want to add from the planning committee's perspective?
No, we had a great discussion. I appreciate Brad getting this new information back to us, particularly the new projections on different prices for fuel, because that does change the comparison between the different technologies. I have just some comments, not from the planning committee's perspective. Just a couple of comments, just so the board is aware of where the commission is on the BP oil funds that were mentioned. we had a collaborative lab last week, and it was very productive. And coming out of that, we identified top project categories that we want to spend this, I think, $7.1 million on. And in order of priority, transportation is the number one priority, then environmental and economic, community and cultural development. Number 3 is a small project pool of $500 to $1 million, which will be small grants around the county. Number 4 is public safety. Number 5 is community opportunity for facilities for youth, seniors, veterans, special needs. Number 6 is innovative projects, including alternative energy, community education enhancements, and others. And number 7 is our CRAs within the unincorporated county. So transportation is the number one issue, and I think funding of the capital portion of electric buses fits right in there. Another possibility for funding out of that category are ferry projects you may have heard of, the gondola projects, and others. And number 6, innovative projects. This is certainly innovative as well. So
And economic.
And economic. So bottom line is we're still going through a process. We're going to get more public input and try to nail down which projects we'll fund. But PSTA needs to make an ask if they want to be considered for funding for the electric capital.
We sent a letter to the Chair of Justice yesterday.
Okay. And we haven't looked at any amounts. I just threw out $349,000 because that's the amount you named for the overhead charger.
Yeah.
But the amount could be different. We could even ask the City of St. Pete. I know both the representatives are not here today. They have BP oil funds. They could contribute to that. If it ends up being in Clearwater, we could ask them. I mean, partnership is given in this, and Commissioner Long is correct. I think it'd be great for Duke to participate in this. It makes all the sense in the world, and y'all know I'm a former Duke employee years ago, but they need a PR win, and this would be one. And it is using BP oil funds to fund something that's going to be sustainable going forward. It's a no-brainer in my view, but I've made a phone call to them. I know Commissioner Long and others have. We need to press that. So if you take out that capital piece, then electric buses are a lot more competitive with the other technologies long term, especially over the life cycle. So that's just the conversation we've had as a commission on the BP oil funds. You know, this is about balance, and I really appreciate the way Brad has approached this. Having lowest emissions really doesn't matter if you can't get service out to the people that need it. On the other hand, we are ground zero for sea level rise.
Yeah.
And we need to take a leadership position in funding the best technology in terms of emissions. So I think we're on a good path. Next month's going to be a great discussion. But I do think getting a pilot of electric vehicles is important, and I think we've got a way to do that. Glad we made the ask for the BP funds. I think that can help us get a couple of electric buses on the road. So that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, so let's have questions for staff, and we can come back and do some final comments and maybe consensus direction if there is any. So I saw Commissioner Gerard had her hand up earlier.
I have some fairly specific questions that I can ask you in a one-on-one that I guess I didn't totally understand. And I appreciate the fact that you want to make this decision in years in the future. I doubt that that's going to happen. I think there's a lot of interest in what kind of technology we have, and I'm sorry, we're going to keep asking questions.
It's okay. That's okay.
And making comments. So I am not happy about buying all diesel buses this year, period.
Commissioner Barkley. Commissioner Barkley.
Yes, Brad, thank you. In our one-on-one, you did talk about these issues, and I appreciate the fact that you put a lot of research and a lot of thought into this. And I appreciate the idea of constantly improving our overall mileage category so that we have that much of an improvement. However, as we've heard, if we can get some funding from outside sources for instance, the charging component of electric buses, that will go a long way towards making those more viable. My other concern is purely based on some of the issues with regard to diesel. Even though these new diesel buses are a potential improvement in terms of the amount of emissions that they generate and the efficiency of their mileage, et cetera, they still are diesel. And diesel is old technology. It's largely funded with foreign oil purchases. It's environmentally not friendly, and it provides, most importantly, a very bad image for us as a social organization. We need to be functioning in such a way that our population views us as forward-thinking, innovative, modern, and we're not doing that kind of thing if we're buying old technology. In addition, if in fact the new engines are more efficient, we change engines about every 400,000 or 500,000 miles. We can put a new engine in an existing diesel bus and pick up the same kind of mileage improvement that we would if we went out and bought all new diesel buses. So from both a social standpoint, a pollution standpoint, an economic standpoint, purchase of a large number of diesel buses is short-sighted. It is cheaper to buy them initially, perhaps, but over the life of the vehicle, we are still driving around in old technology, and we need, in our role as a public organization focusing on social services issues, need to be making sure that we're doing everything possible to be as innovative and modern as possible. So I can't say that we can't have any diesel buses, but I certainly would like to minimize the number of diesel buses that we're putting out on the road. And with all the other innovative ideas that we've talked about here, I hope that we can minimize that in our purchase function as time goes on. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Bill?
Thank you. Mr. Miller, there was a suggestion that when we change out a bus engine, that we possibly could upgrade to the newer, more efficient diesel at that time. Is that a possibility, or is there so much more in the bus that requires us to stay with that version of the engine?
The non-technical answer to your question is, I think you are correct in the last comment you just made, that it would not be beneficial necessarily to just replace the engine on a bus with a lower emission or a higher fuel economy engine and keep the bus running for 25, 30 years, because the rest of the bus, which is almost as expensive or to maintain or more expensive to maintain than the engine itself, still ages out. The tires, the air conditioning system, like my car, all the computers on the bus, the seats, everything on the bus gets older and less reliable. We have relatively fewer breakdowns on the road today because of the engine, on the hybrids or on the diesels we have today. And the analysis showed that the electric buses are reliable. They don't often break down because of the motor. It's all the other stuff on the bus that causes problems, breaks down, makes the bus less reliable.
If I may, that wasn't quite the question I was trying to get at, and I probably phrased it let me try it again.
Okay.
If we have an existing diesel bus that has been here for 6 years, and we are expecting to get another 6 years out of it, and we are replacing the engine on that through our normal engine replacement, is it possible to go to the new diesel technology at that time, or is that what we do, or do we have to keep the technology of the rest of the bus? I see your buddy moving forward.
The short answer is you could. There are many challenges, and it could be cost prohibitive.
Okay. Thank you. If I had another question, There's been a reference to prototype, trying to get a couple of prototype electric buses so that we would find out what benefits would we have if we have a prototype here. What uncertainties would we be able to resolve through a prototype 1 or 2 buses?
There are lots of questions that I know the staff has about how an electric bus program would work in the climate of Pinellas County and in Florida. There have been some electric buses operated in Tallahassee, but that is probably the warmest climate that any electric buses have operated. Most of them are operating in California in a much more moderate climate, and we would like to see how they perform in the heat of the Florida summer. We want to see how these charging stations work and how that works out. The analysis has shown that there are issues in bringing this new technology. It is still new online. It is getting more reliable, and we would ensure that we would have a reliable system. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a prototype, because there's a lot of information out there that we've learned from. But I would describe it as a pilot program, almost to demonstrate the value of this new technology to the public, just as much as we're learning from it internally.
Thank you.
Doug?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. It's kind of interesting that you brought up sustainability. We just had our planning conference, and I brought up what is sustainability. I think we all know the environmental component of it, but it is also the economic and social component that goes with it. And I think sometimes we lose that. You really need to look at the big picture, to make a balance, and not just the environmental component. And to that, I embrace the thought of looking at the best technology available that gets us the most ridership and the least emissions and all of that. And to that, and the only thing that scares me a little bit still about the electric bus, which I like, is that the question is there yet a universal charging station? Which is my concern, because if you buy bus A in charging station A and new technology comes out by bus B or bus C or bus D, you can't get it because you're locked into bus A. That's been one of my big concerns, is the charging station is not universal, whereas with hybrid diesels, whoever comes out with it, we can still pull it up to the pump and put the gas in it. So
yeah.
Are we any closer to a universal charging station for electric buses, so that when we know what's going to happen next year, new buses are going to come out, and are they going to be adaptable? It's much like phone chargers anymore. You're kind of locked into your.
That's exactly right. It's just like your phone. There are different You need to buy a charger for your phone. You need to buy a charging station for your kind of bus. They're not there yet. There's been some discussion, and I think they will get there someday. The mainline bus manufacturers, Gillig and New Flyer, are now coming out with their versions of electric buses, and I think once they become universal, all the manufacturers, they will come together. Either they'll be forced to by the federal government, which pays for a lot of the buses, or they'll do it voluntarily. They're not there yet.
And that's just my concern, is that whatever charging station you buy, you're locked to that bus, for quite a while. Yeah. And if newer technology comes out, you've kind of blocked yourself from going in that direction. So that's one of my big concerns about that. I do love the VP grant money.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any questions on this end? Commissioner?
Yes, I have questions and a few comments that I'd like to make. My first point is, it concerned me when Commissioner Gerard made reference to the diesel buses. Have we made that decision that we're going to buy diesel buses?
No, not yet. Next month.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
That's really important, because I think, and I wrote a couple things down so I wouldn't forget my thoughts. I really believe strongly that as a board, we have to raise our level of thinking and our consciousness about, I think it was Mayor Beavis who talked about the 100,000-foot view, because I would certainly be very disappointed if we made decisions that were penny wise today but pound foolish for the future. And we all heard Whit Blanton's presentation that he made to us in our strategic planning meeting about the fact that technology is forcing public policy makers to almost be transformational in our thinking in terms of how we view the decisions that we make. On top of that, we know that our citizens, not only here, but in Hillsborough County, have no desire for a sales tax increase. In my mind, that forces us as public policy makers to take a very much more strategic and forward-thinking look about how we use the precious resources that we have right now. Now, what does that mean in reality? We're all leaders here in our community, and I think it's important that we take a very strong position and a very strong stand on partnering with those entities that currently fund public transportation. We know that 2, 3, 4, and 5 years from now, it won't look like it looks today. But you know what? It's not a secret that our legislature is very interested in collaborating, consolidating, and finding better ways to financially incentivize our public transportation initiatives. So to me, we need to be smarter, think in a more productive regional way, and partner with as many folks as we possibly can. And we may be pleasantly surprised to learn that there are a lot of innovative, new, creative ways in which we can fund our purchases. And in the public policy makers that I've talked with at the state and the federal level, that is a huge interest to them, that we find ways to have a very integrated system that crosses county lines and makes a very efficient service for our citizens. And in accomplishing the legislative initiatives that we have with establishing pilot projects instead of this enormous, great, big, huge county-wide project we had with Greenlight as an example. I even hate to bring up that word, but I'm just using it as an example. I think that the success of those smaller pilot projects will help our citizens gain a little more trust in how we make our decisions and have a little more confidence in participating in a very positive way in what we're trying to do. That's a long, long story, but I don't know if we're in a position today to make that kind of a policy statement that we want to rethink how we use our current funding. Because one thing I know, if we keep on doing the way we always do it, we're not going to be able to be flexible or timely in how we make our decisions. And all of us that have been here for a while know transportation planning, oh my God, it's in 10, 20, and 30-year cycles. We can't afford to think that way anymore. I hope you all agree with that thought process. I think it's important for the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions for staff on this end? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was late today because I went to a City Madera Beach commission meeting on the Big C.
Oh, the Big C.
And one of the people there was Rodney S. Chapman, and he was talking about the beach access listening program that we have got. And one of the points that he made to the people in the Big C was that transit could be more positive if it were more frequent. And this is just getting back to what Brad was saying earlier. You stand on the waiting for the beach or waiting for your bus, and you want more buses. You don't care what kind of a bus is coming along. They want to get on a bus.
Or a trolley.
So I'm looking at what he was saying, and I'm saying, okay, so maybe at this point we've got 20-minute or 30-minute buses, but what they really need on that route is 15-minute buses. So all I'm saying is that Right now, what we're set with is a situation where the best thing to do perhaps is to buy the diesel buses and look down, farther. And when we get to the point where they're cheaper and other things are making themselves available, then we'll take care of that. But we got to be careful of getting as many buses out as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brad, I think that was a great presentation, and I agree with your conclusions 100%. I think the best thing that we can do for Pinellas County is get the service out on the street. That's what we need to do. I just ran some quick numbers here. If we've got to replace 70 buses over the next 5 years, at today's prices that are listed in here, that's $33 million for the diesel, $49 million if we bought all hybrids, and about $100 million if we bought electric. So unless money's going to fall out of the sky somewhere, we're going to have to make some realistic decisions here. And I'd just like to make a comment about this perception that diesel is somehow an antiquated old technology. I had the opportunity to visit the PACCAR engine manufacturing facility last year, and to see the technology that goes into the designing and production of diesel engines will blow your mind. And to sit here and think that diesel technology is going to vanish sometime anywhere in the near future, we would be seriously fooling ourselves. There are tremendous energy requirements that it takes to move a 40 or 50,000 pound vehicle down the road, and those vehicles are not going to run on solar power and banana peels. This just isn't going to happen. So diesel technology is here for a very, very long time into the future. I think it makes sense to look at these new technologies and do the pilots where we can, when we can get the opportunities to do it. I think the BP oil money makes a lot of sense to try to do that. But to think that we're investing in something that's going to just poof, go vanish is absolutely not the case.
Dave?
I guess we're kind of mixing comments in with questions. I'm trying to. How many buses have we replaced the last 2 years?
I don't know that answer.
And what kind of technology
13,
was?
15? 24.
24. And what was the technology of those?
We bought a diesel hybrid.
Okay. So, again, I appreciate the comment. I think we're looking. We're talking about all the different short-term, long-term technology, old technology, new technology, and I think Mayor Beavis brought up a good point about changing technology, and Commissioner Long has brought that up too in regards to some things that we're looking at. That technology is changing quickly, and we want to make sure we're taking advantage of it and not being hamstrung by decisions that are made too quickly because it might sound better or we might feel better. And I think some of the comments that my colleagues have made with regards to getting the buses, I think you had a slide in here that talked about reliable buses, the number of reliable buses that we have on the road, and the number that we need to get out there, and the number of buses that we need to get out there for frequency. It's one of those things where maybe the frequency, the amount of riders doesn't justify the frequency, but it's like if the more frequent buses are out there, might become more attractive to some riders. And to your point about getting more riders on the buses is probably the number one thing environmentally that we could do. I would agree with that. I think we need to be very careful during this 4 or 5 year period that you've described in the past as a kind of a fiscal cliff area, that we need to try to preserve our cash resources as much as possible, make the changes as quickly as possible in this few years. I don't know how many more buses we could have bought the last 2 years and replaced some of these old buses. So from an environmental standpoint, we could have probably doubled that, maybe not quite doubled it, but we could have had more buses than the 24 that we bought had we gone diesel the last 2 years, and therefore had more of the bad buses off the road, the bad polluting buses. So I just think sometimes we always rise up in 1 year like this is the be-all and end-all discussion or decision to be made, and yet 2 years have passed, 2 years of opportunities to buy more buses to get the bad buses off the road has left us. And here we are again at another, quote, critical juncture that if we don't do a certain thing, then we're just going to be I don't know. I don't want to put words in folks' mouths, but I just think we need to be careful about how we do it with our responsibility to our riders, the social aspect of it, the financial condition of this organization, the people that work for us, the people that ride with us. They depend on us to make good fiscal, sound decisions. And at the same time, I think there's enough concern on this board for environmental issues that the pilot programs are really critically important that we investigate, because we don't know in the long run how those technologies are going to perform, and we are learning. So I think that's a prudent way to go, but I really do think we need to continue to try to get the number of reliable buses out there up at a high level, and I think we can do that with the recommendations that you're bringing forward. So I really commend you with the approach that you've used. The openness to the Sierra Club and anybody else who wants to talk to you about the environmental concerns, because everybody up here shares that. But I appreciate that, and thank you for allowing me a few thoughts.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll make it very short.
Questions, please.
The trolleys and the smaller vans that we start and so forth. The city of Pinellas Park put in a charging station. I wonder if those vehicles are able to use the regular charging stations we have across Pinellas County. We use our CRA and put one in.
I don't believe that our current contractors, Yellow Cab and Care Ride, have any electric vehicles in their fleets that total 160, but there's a potential for that. We've put an addendum in the RFP that is already out on the street to give extra points of incentive to any proposer for our new contracts for DART service if they provide lower emitting vehicles. I don't know if they're going to put it in for electric vehicles that could be charged at your station or not, but to try to get our contractors thinking in the same direction that the board, that we're all thinking in. That's the goal.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions for you. And I probably already know the answer. What's the funding that's being used for the add-ons to the buses? You know, that you buy the basic bus, whatever it is, and then we have to add the Wi-Fi and card readers and all of that. What funding pays for the add-ons to the basic bus?
Typically, those are all eligible for federal grant. Those are eligible expenses under our federal grants. So typically, the buses we have been buying have been bought with our federal grants, and the additional cost to make it a PSTA bus have been just part of the bus price, and that's also been paid for by the federal funds.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, are you saying that the purchase of the bus right now, the basic bus, and the add-ons that you talked about are coming from two different funding sources?
They're coming from the same source, exact same source.
But we're not getting grant funding to buy buses, you said earlier.
In the past, we have gotten grant funds, as I stated,
right, but we're not now.
And we have funded the add-ons and the base price of the bus all from the same source.
Right.
In the future, I would expect that to be the same. To the extent that we have federal funds, we do still receive some federal funds, just not enough to buy 70 buses. We will buy some buses with federal funds, and the add-ons and the base will all be together, paid for by the federal funds. If we're out of federal funds and we have to use our local property tax dollars to fund the buses, then the add-ons and the base will be used.
It's coming from the same source, whether it's going to be all grant funding or whether it's property tax money that's paying for it.
Right.
Okay, that's what I was trying to be clear on. Okay, and I think that was the only question I had for the moment. All right, let's open it up to public comment. Thank you, Brad. I've got a few cards. First up is Tom Rask, who is using Sully Grass's 3 minutes, so there'll be a total of 6 minutes.
Just give me a second to get organized. I left these papers up here before. Well, thank you, Tom Rask, unincorporated Pinellas County. I thank Brad before the meeting for his thorough analysis on the costs of buses.
But there's so much here. I mean, you really want to ask for equal time. There's been so much said here, and I'll start where the rubber hits the road, no pun intended, with the ridership numbers, which still have not come up in this meeting. So for the audience at home, let's review the ridership. Ridership for April, total ridership, year over year, down 14%. So far this fiscal year, you're halfway through your fiscal year, ridership is down 9.4%. And now I'm going to talk more about this when you get to the so-called service improvements. The revenue miles have not been cut. I sent you an email the other day where I pointed out that in Denver, even though they have cut service by 19%, ridership has not gone down. So the whole idea that you need to run more buses every 15 minutes or whatever, that kind of goes by the wayside. Jolly Trolley, down 30% in April compared to last year, down 22% year to date. You talked about somebody talked about the sustainable capital program. I think that was Mr. Miller. Of course, if it's not financially sustainable, then it's not sustainable at all. And you can just ask Solyndra about that, the solar panel manufacturer. And in the beginning of the presentation, there was a lot of reference to meetings with Phil Compton and Frank Jackalone of the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club and Phil were mentioned several times. How do we get in on those meetings? Those of us who are critics, don't you want to hear the other side of the argument? As I pointed out in another email to you, the last post on Facebook the Greenlight Pinellas had, meaning PSTA, was where they said, we look forward to working with critics and supporters alike to help craft a world-class transit system. I made a public records request for what efforts have been made to reach out to those critics. There were no records responsive to my request. It's been a year and a half. And when you think about the Sierra Club, I'm not here to attack the Sierra Club, but there are a lot of misstatements by the Sierra Club. As part of the Hands Across the Sand event, for instance, here last Saturday, which I attended, but that's another story, Mr. Jackalone said that seismic waves destroy brain waves. I don't even know what that statement means, but I do know it's incorrect. He made all kinds of claims. Mr. Compton here said that they had a human son that spelled out 100% clean energy. No, it didn't. It spelled out 100% clean power. I hope you can all see. I blew up the image, you can see. Power. And that's what it is. That's what this is about for the Sierra Club. If the county can fund charging stations, they can also fund the purchase of a diesel bus. To sort of subtract out the cost of a charging station is just bad cost accounting. So let's not go there with that argument. Also, there have been arguments raised elsewhere, and maybe they were raised here today, that we don't know the cost of diesel in the future. That's true. We don't know the cost of diesel. But we do know that the total life cycle cost for an electric bus is about 70% higher. This is Mr. Miller's own numbers. 70% higher. And as Mr. Scott has pointed out at a previous meeting, their unscheduled number of hours of unscheduled breakdown hours is literally like 100 times what it is for diesel buses. So they're 70% more expensive. And if diesel prices were to double, the electric buses would only be 40% more expensive. They're more expensive. And batteries. Any of you who've taken your car to a mechanic have probably heard that Florida is very, very hard on batteries. I don't know what batteries they use in buses, but it was brought up here that they have not been used in this kind of heat. I guess they don't use them in places like Phoenix. They use them in California, but in coastal areas, not inland, like Riverside or El Cajon or any of these places where it's really hot. So you have to consider how the batteries will perform, and we don't know. So I agree with Commissioner Eggers. We should go slow on this, just every year. Try to do the best, make the best decision you can. Okay? And so the transit ideologues on this board, and there are a few of them, have to face reality. Commissioner Gerard said she's not happy about buying diesel buses. Well, hurricane season's coming up. I'm not happy about hurricanes. But it's reality. That's what it is in the end. It's reality. So we don't need central planning here. I'm sorry if I sound harsh. There's so much to cover here, and I would love to have these kinds of individual sit-downs that Mr. Miller has with the Sierra Club. He confirmed to me before the meeting that they're not partners of PSTA. I asked, because they're out saying they're partners of PSTA. No, they're not. There's no formal partnership. I would love to sit in on the meetings he has with the Sierra Club. I would love to have meetings with PSTA staff about how we can build a world-class transit system. So again, let's end where I started. Ridership, halfway through your fiscal year, down 9.4%. And in Denver, when they cut the bus service, meaning the revenue miles, by 19%, there was no decline in ridership. So do the right thing. Do what you promised as part of Greenlight Pinellas, which is you said there will be a depleted network of basic routes. Do the right thing by the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rask. All right, the next person is Barbara Hazelton.
Thank you. Good morning. I just wanted to cover a few things. First of all, I dug out my copy of the Pinellas bus study from a year and a half ago, and it was interesting as I looked at it this morning because it's all marked and red and earmarked and dog-eared and so on and so forth. I really did familiarize myself with the $700,000 that we spent on this analysis of our bus system. And yet I think that there's some things that we kind of need to be reminded of, perhaps, and maybe I'm wrong there, but page 73 of the bus study said that by increasing investment in its best performing routes while examining alternative means of providing mobility along its poorer performing routes, PSTA can move into the future with continued increases in ridership and increased operational efficiencies while remaining a responsible steward of taxpayer resources. And then also, PSTA's core network of just 7 routes, which were 4, 18, 19, 52, 60, and Central Avenue and Suncoast trolleys, is responsible for 71% of the system's ridership. So we have 7 routes out of the 40, and of course that was something that we talked about a lot during Greenlight, and now we see the ridership is down. So it is important. I think it's an important time right now as we're looking to possibly have an opportunity to retool the system going forward. And I do agree with Brad on the. I think there was a very fair analysis that was done on the varying different types, the 4 types. However, I want to bring again into the conversation smaller vehicles and how there should actually be a column added to your comparison of smaller vehicles. And if that means that through that comparison, in order to have apples to apples, that you have to replace them once or 1.2 times or 2.3 times or whatever it turns out to be so that it's apples to apples, to give us all a chance to really have a judgment, a value judgment on that form of transportation. Because on page 60 of the Transportation Management and Designs out of California, who I believe are experts, I mean, we paid them $700,000. So I think, and there's no question that she really knocked herself out, her team did, to look in every nook and cranny. And on page 60, she says, while in some instances it is important to continue to operate poorly performing routes to maintain transportation connectivity for certain communities, a substantial amount of cost savings can be achieved by switching to smaller vehicles. Now, if we don't know what those smaller vehicles are, perhaps we could get in touch with TMD because maybe they know what they are. And I don't mean that smart. I mean that truly. These people are every day in the business of designing and analyzing systems. Maybe they know of some technology that is a smaller vehicle. Because I would like to stress that with the ridership being down, that not only should smaller vehicles be considered for maybe some communities and maybe Lealman, but also for current low-performing routes. We all still see buses traveling around with a few people on them. Maybe that's sometimes of the day. I don't know. We have to analyze this. And if you want higher frequency, then perhaps if you have less investment per unit, and I realize that the drivers are an expensive part of it, but still, I think that when you get the cost of these vehicles to match the ridership, the demand, it's a lower demand. You need a lower form of a vehicle, which is less cost. And I want to remind you, too, am I out of time? I just want to say, the ad valorem can blow up on us again any minute. And so I think, personally, I believe that we're in another real estate bubble, and there's nothing really supporting this economy. And so right now is a time to be tightening our belts and to be considering other forms of smaller vehicles in more usages across the system. So if everything blows up, we're not all sitting here holding the bag on $1 million buses. So that's what I'd have to say. I'd like to just say that this is the thing. I'd like to see the column added on smaller vehicles so we have a true opportunity to take a look at something that TMD might recommend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, next speaker would be Mr. Compton.
Still good morning, right? Hi, Phil Compton, Sierra Club, 1990 Central Avenue. I want to thank Brad Miller for his nimble adjustments to the points that were made last Wednesday at the Planning and Finance Committee by board members and by the public. There's still a few little things that I'd like to point out that I think continue to need tweaking in this analysis before you draw any conclusions from it, okay? One point that Mr. Miller made is that you would, going forward, make an adjustment in which types of buses you would buy based solely on the price of diesel as one basic parameter, controlling factor. And that may sound like a reasonable way to go if the price of diesel were the only consideration. There are other reasons for considering other things. You should know, of course, that the electric bus option today, with the current sources of electricity, there is some net pollution from that, from Duke's sources of coal and natural gas to produce that electricity. It's about 1/4 of the net carbon emissions that your diesel and diesel hybrid buses are producing. So today, you would reduce that. Do we need to reduce our carbon emissions? Yes, we do. Do we need to provide service? Yes, we do. The scenario where there were shown in this example 2 buses with sharing one charging station, that charging station, you should know, can serve up to 9 buses. It may not be practical with your routes for it to serve 9 buses, but it can certainly serve more than 2. So don't carve that particular number in stone and add it to the total as if that is a set factor. That is a very variable factor, very much a variable factor. And we should all remember, of course, that in the fleet mileage analysis, that an electric bus is going to do better than the diesel, better than the 4, better than the 6, better than the 8 miles that your hot BAEs will be getting, I understand, 22 miles per gallon. So that's not shown there. Please keep these things in mind as you're looking at this. I think it's great. We think it's great that transit does reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of the community for people who ride them, the 14 million or whatever that number is today. You can do better, and this technology allows you to do better than that. 6.3% reduction in greenhouse gases, 1,619 tons. You can do far better than that with this new technology, and you can afford it. Thank you, and we look forward to working with you because there's more than one reason to consider this switch. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Compton. I don't have any other cards, but is there any other folks that want to come forward and speak to this item? All right, seeing or hearing none, I'm going to come back to the board and try to sort of summarize where everybody's at. I think what I've heard today is that I think everybody is in support of the actual policy itself. But I think what I'm hearing is a concern that we're going to go all in one direction or all in another, and there are the different views on which direction that should be. You're coming back with a proposal, correct?
Correct.
Brad? Look, I don't want to speak on behalf of everybody, but we clearly have people that want to go in one direction and people that want to go another. And to me, I think what you should be bringing back to us is something that is mixed and balanced and covers all technologies. I mean, I'm just hearing it from both sides. Now, if you all are feeling something different, let me know. But he's going to come with a recommendation. If we don't try to give him, if we don't want him to change what he's been saying his recommendation is going to be, then we don't have to give him any direction. But I think for a more beneficial meeting next month, we should talk about it. Commissioner Gerard.
What I hear the recommendation being right now is all diesels. So I'm just saying that I don't like that. I would like to see a mixed.
Commissioner Barkley.
I'd like a little bit of clarification. I think Brad, Henry, and Commissioner Scott all indicated that the cutaway vehicles are not as well equipped for major runs, and they're not lasting as long as a traditional bus, no matter what the propulsion source is. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that when we hear people say that we want to get smaller buses, what we're really saying is that we're increasing the amount of unreliable or shorter-term vehicles. Is that correct?
Well, I think the suggestion was to do an analysis over the life cycle cost of smaller vehicles. They are not they're not built as well. They don't operate for nearly as many years, so you have to buy more over the same lifespan of a regular bus. You have to buy more, but we can do that analysis.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so is there consensus that we agree with the policy, more or less, and we would like, when Brad makes his recommendation, to consider the fact that we have multiple feelings here, so more of a mix of technologies could be a good compromise for us versus going all in one direction or all in another? Commissioner Long.
And before Brad answers that question, I would like to know that when he comes with the policy, he has nailed down the opportunity for our partnerships with, for example, Duke. I think that could be very beneficial to the bottom line cost. And so I don't want to leave that hanging out there so that we're making a decision in the dark on that particular issue.
Commissioner?
First of all, I wanted to thank Ms. Hazelton for reminding me, if nobody else, about the bus study that we spent that kind of money on and some of the nuggets that were in there, because I think sometimes I was trying to think back at what we purchased the last 2 years and didn't have that number at the top of my head. So I think that's important. We weren't too worried about there being a mix in bus purchases last year or the year before. And so if we go in this direction of mixing it, I would like for Brad to also present the opportunity cost or loss that we have by doing that in terms of replacing optimally the reliable buses that we need for whatever purpose, whether it's efficiencies or whether it's for social reasons for our riders. We did talk in the finance meeting, and I appreciate Commissioner Barkley bringing up that other column, and I think Ms. Hazelton mentioned it as well, where we talk about just seeing it in, we kind of forget that we're replacing an engine on the diesels every 6 years. Is it every 6 years? Is that right? Yeah, whatever. So there is a comparison that we can lay side by side, and I think that's enlightening, especially on some of those lesser traveled routes, because again, we're trying to build credibility with our residents, whether it's the ones who ride the buses or don't ride the buses, and I think it's important on us to continue looking at that. So whatever we bring, I think the recommendation from staff needs to be what it is. If we go in a different direction, there's definitely going to be some opportunity costs, ones that I'm not sure this organization can afford in the next few years, at least certainly in the next 4 to 5 years anyway. So thank you.
Brian?
Thank you. I just wanted a point of clarification on the smaller bus issue. The cutaway buses those are the ones that are really not very reliable, and they truly are 5-year throwaway vehicles. The buses that we're buying now, the full-size buses, are manufactured by Gilly. They're 40 feet long. They also make 35 and 30-foot models. So they are substantially more money than the cutaways, but they're also substantially more reliable. So, you're going to replace those cutaways probably at least 1.2 times in the same time that you would operate a 30 or a 35 smaller, Gilly bus. So I think we should probably evaluate that on the routes that we're looking at to see what there are some instances where a body on chassis or a cutaway vehicle makes sense. So we just need to understand what route we're buying the vehicle for and making sure that we're applying it properly to make sure that we're getting the best return on that investment. And I completely agree with Commissioner Egger's comment about that opportunity cost of what we're buying versus what perhaps we're not replacing, and how that plays out. Thank you.
Okay. Bill?
This has been a very interesting conversation, and I appreciate all the comments of the public and the members of the board. One thing that I keep coming back to is that this is changing technology, and I think what we're being recommended is we're going to have to make a decision each year based on whatever is pending, whatever the technology status at that time. And I'm not, and I think back to when the green light plan was presented, fuel costs were much higher. At that time, our operating costs were higher. We've done a lot to cut our costs within our organization, thanks to Mr. Miller and the staff. So things do change as we go along. So what I think we're doing is we're creating a structure to analyze the options that we would be applying each year as we move forward. And I think we're getting a lot more sophisticated, and that is a very appropriate process. Thank you.
Yeah. To what I would like to see staff bring, I would like them to bring back the best plan for the PSTA that fits those three components of sustainability. And I think to have a mix, it needs to incorporate all things, I think, with, as we talked about, if we have the partnerships in place with, we're not just buying, we're going to buy buses again next year, and we're going to have an opportunity, and technology is going to be different. And as Commissioner Egger said, we don't even kind of remember what and how many we bought in the past 2 years, and I think that'll apply next year. But if we don't have those partnerships in place with Duke, or we don't have, the commitment of the commission with the BP money, I think it changes the way it looks as to what staff brings us, and I think that needs to be a component of it. So that's kind of my thought on, can it be a mix? Yeah, if the pieces are in place, it can be, but I don't know if they will be. So.
Okay. I think you've heard everybody's comments. It's an informational item.
That's right.
I think you've heard everybody's concerns. It sounds like everybody's supporting the policy, that it's flexible for the future. I think you've heard the information everybody wants to hear, or brought back to them on the smaller buses, whether these partnerships come into play. And I think you hear, some folks want to go in one technology and someone wants to go in another. It's about looking at balance. Commissioner Welch.
I did have a question on the letter that went out for the BP funding. Did you specify an amount in that letter? Has it gone out already?
I think it went yesterday. Did it? Right, Joel? Do you know? Oh, it hasn't gone yet. The letter that it was for $349,000 for the Charger. But if you
I would
specify a number, or
no, I would get the proper input. I don't know if that's performance management, but 349 was the overhead, and then there was a 40,000 for a depot charger, right?
Right.
So I would tend to make it 389 or 400. We're just making an ask.
Okay.
The commission still has to go through this process. There are other requests, but that would make us less dependent on Duke, who, again, it should be a no-brainer that they participate, but I don't want this to hinge on them.
Yeah, they can buy the next technology.
Right. So, and plus there's some in-kind for installation and development of the plan, so there are other places that they can contribute. But I would make it 400. It's an ask, and it'll have to be in the mix with all the other requests. The other thing I wanted to point out is that you said in the planning committee, I just want to make sure that Brad is not suggesting 35 diesels, right? This would be, the first batch would be 7, and then you'll make a reassessment for the next ask. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's not the entire 35, it's the first batch. And I don't know if I'm there yet, because I'm still.
5, right? It's 5?
Is it 5 or 7?
Henry, do you remember? Isn't it 5 in the first year? 5 new ones.
So 7 hybrids are on the way.
Yeah,
Okay.
that vote has already been taken.
But it's not like that whole batch of 35, he's locking us into diesel at this
Correct.
point. I just wanted to make sure we understood that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Just real quick, on the, I think the process that Commissioner Welch is talking about that we're going through, we'll be meeting or getting input from the residents in July. That's the time frame. And our one of the things that we said is that we wanted to make final decisions by the end of this calendar year. So it might be sooner than that. And the issues that we're talking about with Duke Energy could be sooner or later. Those are things that we're working on. I think it's great that we're working on all that stuff, but just in perspective, I don't know about the timeliness of everything.
You're talking about the BP?
I'm talking about the BP discussions at the county commission level. We certainly have had that discussion already, and it's ongoing still. But we're not even meeting again with the public, and I think it's July 12th or something like that. But anyway, sometime in July. So, just FYI.
Okay, so from a timing perspective, and just bring everybody's attention that it is 11:30. We have another probably lengthy discussion on service adjustments, June, October service improvements. There's some comments on that. So what is the will of the commission as far as whether we are going to hear the auditor or postpone it?
Is the auditor here?
They are?
The auditor is here.
My suggestion would be to hear that. I don't think that's going to take a real long time.
Well, I was going to put it at the end because I know people are here to speak to the improvement, this service improvement. That's our next item under informational item, but I'm just trying to get a gauge because
I would go ahead with the auditor now.
I just don't want to lose a quorum because that is an action item.
I have to go.
You have to go.
I agree, too. I agree with doing, we waited for them, they can wait for us.
So do it a postponement?
Well, or at the
We
end.
may lose the quorum, though, by the time we're done with system improvements.
You need the quorum for system.
How many do we need? We already lost one.
No, the system
No, the system improvements is an informational item, but you need a quorum for the auditor.
Yes.
It's an action item. The auditor is an action item, so it requires a vote, and we need a quorum. I'm just saying we can postpone it to the next meeting. I don't think there's a timing issue.
8, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We got 10. I don't know how many people got to leave.
Dave has to leave.
Andrew, how fast can you do the audit presentation?
Thank you for the audit. That's great.
All right. Let's just postpone the item because I'm afraid we're going to lose people.
Which item?
Let's not take that chance. We told people we were going to end our meeting at 11:30. The planned time for the sustainability capital improvement was 20 minutes. We went an hour or more, and there was no way to control that. So I think out of respect for everybody's time, we should postpone the audit. So can I have a motion to postpone?
Somebody have to go.
I don't agree with that, Madam Chair, because I don't know how far they came, but and I'm annoyed that they weren't here in the beginning, but they are here. So let's just hear it and move on. We can take action afterwards. We're all here. I don't know. I'm just one person.
I agree.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Let's get it done.
Okay, let's hear the audit, since it's an action item, requires a vote.
Yep.
Much for your patience and your indulgence on this. I'd like to take this moment and introduce CLA and Andrew Laughlin, who is the principal partner there on the audit. It was the first year that we've had CLA as our auditor, and oftentimes there's growing pains on both sides. But I can say they were extremely well prepared coming in. It was an excellent audit. They spent a lot of time going through internal controls and delving into many different areas. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Andrew, and he can introduce.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm under orders to make this very brief, so I will do that. But of course, if you have questions along the way, please feel free to ask. So, just going through some of our reports and opinions, was there anything really different that came about from last year to this year? And the answer is really no. The reports that we rendered in previous year are the same this year. Number 6 you see here in the independent accountant's report. That's a report on investment compliance. Last year, 2014, was actually the first year that we rendered an opinion on that. So this is the second year under that. Basically, otherwise, all is the same. We report on the financial statements, give an opinion on the numbers, whether they're accurately stated. We perform a single audit, so we have a compliance-related report that we render. And we also assess the internal controls as a whole of the entity, and we report on that as well. So let me just give you real quick the results on that. On the actual audit of the financial statements of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR, for the year ended September 30, 2015, we issued an unmodified opinion, which means all the balances are stated fairly within all material respects. On the single audit end, we had a federal single audit and a state single audit. That's if you have federal awards or state grants. And if you expend over $500,000 of each or of either, then you're subject to what's known as a single audit. It's a compliance-related audit. We had one on the federal side and on the state side. We had no issues from that. We evaluated the internal controls of the authority as a whole, looking at a variety of different transaction processes, and related key controls, assessed, assigned, and implementation of those, tested some of those key controls. We had no issues there, so no findings to report on any of those 3 areas. There was a prior year finding relating to purchased advertisements with the DHS, Department of Homeland Security. That finding from last year was remediated this year. They didn't have any spending of those types of grant dollars, so that issue did not was correct, considered correct as of FY15. Management letter, if we have any recommendations for enhancements in internal controls or improvements in financial management, a couple verbal items that we had that we discussed with management, but nothing that merited inclusion in a management letter. So really nothing to report here. Very clean audit overall, as I'm pleased to announce. And on the independent accountant's report, that's that assessment we make over investment compliance. So is the authority complying with its investment policy? We look at all the elements of the policy and make sure you're in compliance, reporting, education, the types of investments that PSTA is in. We do a thorough testing procedures on that, clean opinion there. Just to give you some highlights of the procedures we performed, I mentioned, look, we had no findings. Does that mean, hey, did the audit really do its job? These were all the key controls that we evaluated: cash and investments, inventories, revenues, receipts, AP disbursements, capital assets, self-insured claims, financial closing reporting. So we assess all of those areas, identify all the controls, and see if there's any breakdown in controls along the way. And if there were, then we would be reporting those to you, but we didn't find any. We also, like I mentioned, do a single audit over compliance of federal and state grants. No findings there, as I mentioned. A couple other the non-traditional things that we also embarked on for FY15. We're doing an IT security assessment, so we made a recommendation to management, and they followed through on doing, for example, an external penetration test. So within our ISSG team, that's our information securities group in that department, we have what are known as ethical hackers that will come in and really try to penetrate the authority's network and see what kind of information that they can glean but they're ethical, of course, so we're not doing this with malintent. And then we report those findings back to the authority to see if there are any vulnerabilities within the network, and report that back and take corrective action, whatever it may be, installing firewalls, intrusion detection software, other vulnerabilities that need to get closed up. So we're in the process of doing that, which is of value to the authority. We also did a telecom cost savings assessment. We feel as a result of that, we're probably going to save the authority somewhere in the neighborhood of $70,000 a year. What did we do? For example, they use the carrier Sprint on their fleet tracking system for their buses, and we found that they were in an oversized data pool, so we shrunk that down a bit without the risk of having overages, and that saved some significant coin, as well as some other things, some add-on call features that were necessary, zero usage lines that didn't need to be there that we deleted, that we got rid of. All in all, reaping savings for the authority, and that was the purpose of that assessment. Real quick, the authority, if you just look at their financial statements, looks a little crazy. They have this big new pension liability. It's for $17,872,765. I've explained this pretty thoroughly to the audit committee. I'll try to give you all the 2-minute version. Basically, as a result of the adoption of this new pension standard, the authority participates in the Florida retirement system, so they're one of many participating local governments in that. And so now the rules have said, well, instead of that big liability, which is basically the actuarially determined total liability minus the fiduciary net position, which are those investable assets that pay down benefits, that net number needs to get spread out amongst all the participating employers. And that's the share that PSTA has recognized, which is in line with other transportation authorities in the area. I think Hart is at $23 million, Tampa Airport is at $27 million, so all kind of in the same ballpark. That's allocated based on your contributions to FRS in relation to total contributions, and there's a proportionate share that you recognize. The total net pension liability was $23 billion with a B, so $17 million is what you recognized out of that. Just a real quick financial statement analysis, just so you can see, hey, are there any big trends, anything moving in a different direction than in previous years? You know, I'll just mention real quick capital asset additions. That changes, fluctuates based on the amount of bus purchases and installation of bus shelters. So there was 21 hybrid bus purchases at about $700,000 a piece, and so that was about $14.5 million of that $15 million of capital asset additions. So that was a big amount where we didn't see that activity in the prior year. And then on the liability side, I mentioned the net pension liability. We implemented for the prior year presented, which was 2014, since the authority presents comparative financial statements. So we implemented for that prior year. It was $12 million last year and then kicked up to $17 million this year, mostly due to investment performance is the reason for that $5 million increase. On the revenue side, we do see a little bit of dip in passenger fares, but actually don't think that people don't want to ride the buses anymore. In fact, we had an increase in actual number of passengers of actual total fares, but it was the types of fares that were purchased in the current year versus in prior years, where there was less one-day more expensive passes and more transportation disadvantaged 30, 60-day passes purchased in the current year, which are cheaper, and so that's the discrepancy in the revenue, even though your actual ridership had actually gone up from prior year to current year, but a little dip in the revenue. Ad valorem taxes going up as property values are rising. Millage rate has been the same for the past 4 years. And federal and state and local grant revenue is consistent. And then the operations side, real consistency from year to year. Don't really have much to say about this. A little dip in marketing. It's just based due to reshuffling within the marketing department and some personnel getting repositioned to transportation and planning department and not charging their time to marketing. But that doesn't mean the marketing function has gone away. We just saw some reduction in cost based on personnel in that department. But overall, pretty consistent from year to year over the last 4 years, as you all can see in this slide. Net position, unrestricted net position, that's kind of what's left over for operations. That took a dip from 13 to 14, and that really has to do with the implementation of GASB 68 and 71 on the net, recognizing that big net pension liability number with no asset to offset it, so it reduced net position as a result. Some things to be on the lookout in the future. For this upcoming year, the uniform grant guidance, that's coming into effect for for all the subpart F, which is how we select major programs on the federal side, so there'll be a little differences there. And so there's some administrative requirements that have changed as well. So any new federal grant money that comes in, we have to be aware of what those requirements are, and we'll be working with management on that throughout the course of the year, and making sure that they're aware of what the administrative changes around procurement, time and effort reporting, and subrecipient monitoring, other compliance requirements that may apply for federal grant monies that come in. So that's this new grant guidance and what that's about. Overall, communication and governance, which is you all, I really have nothing negative to report. It's as Debbie mentioned, it's a first-year audit, so you think there's growing pains, but it's been a smooth transition, we feel. I think management feels the same way. Yeah, I'm usually presenting to this board, or I would want to, in December, or January, or February, and here it is late May. That doesn't have to do with anything with management's fault or the auditor's fault. It really has to do with the Florida retirement system not getting the information that we needed to complete the audit and implement that pension standard until just recent, within the last few weeks to a month. So that's caused a delay not only for this entity, but governments all around Florida that participate in the Florida retirement system. So that's the cause for the delay. Overall, though, no disagreements, no issues with management. Ran through that pretty quick, but if you have any questions, comments, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you. Appreciate your presentation. Commissioner Barkley, you are the finance chair, and I know that your committee goes through all the various details of this audit. So would you be so kind
the Finance
as to talk
Committee,
about
Madam Chair, the Finance Committee unanimously recommended acceptance of the fiscal year 2015 audit report. PSTA received an unmodified opinion. Auditors found no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, and we are pleased with the audit overall. I might add on a personal note that I was particularly pleased with the added analysis on hacker analysis and also on telecom analysis to help keep future costs in line. So I think those are both very important, and so we would recommend approval of the audit.
Second.
Well, we have to go out to public comment. Let's not make a motion until we do that. Brad, you were going to talk about the bank letter request and why we didn't get bank letters.
Oh, I think there was a citizen who asked about some bank letters, and I think Debbie looked into that.
Yes, I guess the question was, why aren't bank confirmation letters included as part of the audit report? They're actually included as part of the audit work papers. It's one of the first things that we do is we prepare confirmation statements that come from me that go directly to the bank, and then are returned directly to the auditors for that independent verification of balances. But we don't include everything in the audit work papers in the report itself.
Thank you. Are there questions for staff? I'll start on this end this time. Questions? No? Okay. Questions on this end? Commissioner Walsh?
On the intrusion detection, the ethical hackers, which I've never heard before, by the way. You said that's still underway? It hasn't been completed?
Has not been completed. So yeah, once that's completed, we'll meet at that time to go review the findings, but I can't report findings at this time since it's still underway.
This is your first year on the audit, correct? So did our previous auditors do that? This is the first time we've done that?
First time it's been done, yeah, in a number of years.
Okay, and when do you think it'll be completed?
I can check on that. Probably, I mean, in the matter of weeks, month, perhaps. I mean, in the near term, I should say.
Okay. And our CAFR, when we download it still says draft. Is it draft? Is it waiting for something else?
Basically approval.
Okay.
And we're just in the final stages. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions before I go to public comment?
Maybe he's not willing to tell you when it'll be done because it's a hacking thing.
I tell you, I have to kill you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'm going to open it up for public comment. We have one card from Mr. Rask. He has 3 minutes.
Thank you, Tom Rask, unincorporated, Pinellas County. Great report. I really was impressed. And I did speak to Ms. Leos before the meeting, and she explained what the question was. She said that it's not I brought up that the bank letter was not mentioned in the audit report, and maybe it should be mentioned next year. Also, I'm not an auditor, but it seems to me that the firm conducting the audit should really have that bank letter sent to them directly, is my view on this. My understanding was it goes via staff, because a former IRS agent, later tax controversy expert, told me that when you perform an audit, you should go into the situation, and the auditor probably knows this, assuming that everyone's lying to you until you can prove to yourself that they're not lying to you. Let me just, there were a couple of things there, a couple of the numbers that came up. I heard what he said about the pension liabilities and the reason, but I would submit to this board that you can reduce the pension liabilities by cutting your bus service, because then you have fewer employees. And also, former Hillsborough County Commissioner, now lobbyist, I believe, at the very least attorney for TransDev, Ed Taranchik, told me, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, that we're going to have, he's really knowledgeable about transportation. He said, we're going to have self-driving buses within a few years. So there's good news. You're going to be able to reduce your pension liabilities by having fewer staff. And I don't want to put words in the auditor's mouth, but he basically confirmed something I've been bringing up before. How are you increasing your ridership? By either selling very cheap passes or giving them away. Because if somebody who is very transportation disadvantaged gets an $8 pass that they didn't even pay for, well, it's free. That's not the same as having people pony up to $65 to buy a monthly pass. And I asked a couple of years ago at a meeting that you look at that as one of your metrics. How many people every month are actually willing to buy one of those passes? I believe the number is around 3,000. I do. Also, this is I said it's a great audit. I'm very glad that PSTA changed away from the other firm, the one that couldn't find the DHS grant issues. I remember when that report was presented 2 years ago, then board member Wengay Newton asked the auditor, did you find any evidence of any criminal activity? And then he chuckled, and of course she said no, because that's not part of her job to find that. That's actually your job if you ever wanted to really probe. I'm not saying there is any criminal activity. Of course I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that that's not the auditor's job, and you should keep that in mind.
Thank you, Mr. Rask.
I think I have for Mr. Grasso. Is it 6?
No, 3 minutes. I announced that when you got up. There's Mr. Sully's not on your card.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So back to the board. Is there a motion to accept this annual audit?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Is there any final comments? I'll start at this end. Yeah? Any final comments from anybody?
Just one quick one,
Okay.
and I just wanted to first of all talk about this ethical intrusion, Commissioner Welch. I just learned about that this week too. Very interesting. So I guess if they get caught, it's okay because that's what they're supposed to be doing. That.
Right.
But with the way things are going these days, it's a boy, we can't spend enough money trying to protect ourselves. And the only comment I had was really the transparency and accessibility that is present in audits. Talking about accessibility from any of the board members, staff members, and public as they have a chance to discuss is something that I'm glad that we're continuing to embrace, Brad, on all levels. Transparency of government is really critical, and accessibility by all groups is. So I thank you for continuing to make that effort and keep trying to improve on that every step of the way. Thank you.
Bill?
Just, I heard Ms. Leas and the auditor say that the bank confirmations are returned directly to the auditor, so they do not go through staff, so they are an independent. And that's something I learned a million years ago when I was taking my intermediate accounting course.
I think I took that same class. Okay, thank you, guys. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All righty. Thank you. Now we will move on to, back to our informational item, which is the June and October service improvements. This was discussed in the Planning Committee. I will turn it over to Cassandra.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am going to present to you the June and October service changes. Normally, we don't show you all the June service changes or the service changes like we are making in June because they are relatively minor. But I did want to show you this time because you've seen some issues come before this board before, and this shows you how thoughtful we are when we look at our service changes 3 times a year. We are taking into consideration the work that has been done in the past and the community bus plan. This was a wide scale community engagement process, and we did get a lot of information about what people want to see in the system. As you recall from the public engagement out of that plan, people wanted to see more evening service, they wanted to see more weekend service, and we know that ridership is gained through frequencies. But we also knew we had to look at various funding scenarios. Since then, we've moved forward with the path forward, and in that, looking at a customer-oriented service redesign that is focused on focusing transit on where transit works best. But also identifying alternatives when we reallocate services. And you see that in the Pinellas Park area and our partnership with Uber. We also wanted to take a data-driven approach and a customer-sensitive approach. You have asked us in the past that every time we make changes to make sure that people have alternatives, and we are doing that. We have presented to you a multi-phase plan. We've taken that from a 10-phase plan down to a 3-phase plan. We started this last year in looking at some of the lower performing routes. We looked at a very successful change from a hub to a grid system in downtown St. Petersburg, and now we are moving on to the rest of the system. We are focusing on changes, small changes in June to clean up a few things, but also our larger changes in North County and some in Mid County in October, and in February focusing on South County and the remaining services in Mid County. As we start to look at changing the services and how things are services put out on the road, we are looking at ways that we can put small increases in targeted areas as we reallocate some of those service hours. But please keep in mind that all of the service changes that we are proposing are budget neutral. So our plan in doing this, in reviewing the community bus plan every step of the way, and then looking at new data that has come out of our data collection for our system, we feel that we will get closer to some of those principles of the community bus plan, looking at more efficiencies, looking at a grid network, looking at ways to overall expand the span of service where we need it, and improve weekend coverage where we can. So in June, we have a few changes that are being made. These are not large changes, they are small changes, but they do speak to the efficiency and how we look at routes. So we will be changing in Pinellas Park, the Route 11 and the 444 to balance out some of the service. You see the star, that is Crystal Lakes Manor. We are now going to serve Crystal Lakes Manor with the Route 11. We found a little extra time in the Route 11 and are able to put the service into Crystal Lakes. This improves the service for them, expanding their service of hours, expanding their Saturday service, and giving them some Sunday service. So we feel that this change will improve their service, but still will be a change to the Route 444, eliminating this leg of the 444. So again, balancing out and saving some revenue hours in that way. Another change that we are instituting on June 5th as part of our service changes is making sure that we can have the Route 52 run on time. This is a very long route, is overcrowded in some places, and we have looked at the data of where people are getting on and off as they come into St. Petersburg. We feel that based on the data, and the changeover in passengers at the location of Grand Central, we would be able to truncate the service at Grand Central. Those passengers that get off at that location can have multiple options to get into downtown St. Petersburg, but the data is showing us that the majority of passengers are disembarking already, and so we don't feel that this will be a huge change to the majority of riders on the 52. Bob is going to talk a little bit about our public engagement for these efforts too.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
These are going to be fun for us because we get to go out to Crystal Lakes Manor, and there's a facility right next door, Magnolia Gardens, which is an assisted living facility, and give them improved service, as Cassandra said, revenue neutral. They're excited about it. They have been working with us, very eager to spread the information. They have invited us. We're going to be meeting with their constituents or their clients in their meetings. They are distributing the information for us. We've made some palm cards. They're getting them out to the community as well. We have behind the driver notices out there. We've been working internally with our drivers and CSRs to make sure they can help spread the word as well. And we will be moving forward with these plans, helping to continue to educate the people as they come and go in that area. Now, as for the Route 52, that's going to be a little bit different. What we're going to do there, we're going to have some, we've got behind the driver notices out, of course, again, with the CSRs, the drivers, we've worked with them there to get the message out. We've got sandwich boards that will be out at Grand Central at the stop for the 52. We will also deploy our yellow vest ambassadors on a rolling schedule for the week prior to the change, so that as people get off the 52, we'll be able to tell them, okay, as you're going downtown St. Pete, you've got your choice of the 5, 14, 15, 18 Central Avenue trolley and 79, and we'll help them find their way as we move forward there. It shouldn't be a trouble because, as Cassandra said, and we learned this during the Williams Park outreach, most of them get off and take the first available bus downtown anyway. So very minor change, and we're looking forward to helping with this. We'll be there also, very importantly, the day after and after the change, that first Monday, because that's when you tend to get the most questions. And now Cassandra will take you through the October planned outreach.
So our service changes in October are planned to be focusing on removing underutilized deviations. In some cases, this would be very minor changes to the route and would not require a public hearing, but there are some other major changes to routes that we are considering. We are looking at some ways to make the system more efficient but still have the same coverage so that people have access to the service, but again, changing the way that we perform that service based on the ridership data. So we have made some specific proposals that we have had out at our public meetings, things like moving a deviation from the Route 62 into Safety Harbor. This route, which goes up Belcher, will come straight into Countryside. The replacement for that service would be the Palm Harbor and Dunedin connector, so that would be extended into Safety Harbor. So what this does for Safety Harbor is changes their span of service, decreases their span of service, and has a small decrease in their frequency, but at the same time we're making the 62 more efficient and able to reallocate some of the hours in other places. We've also talked to the cities along the North Coastal about changing to a 7-day-a-week Jolly Trolley service. This would be in combination with streamlining our Route 66. We have looked at the ridership for the Route 66 and kept a portion of the services on that route for commuter service as well as school service. So again, looking at the data, we feel like we can make this change and make a more efficient service as also something that the community wants. We can then reallocate some of those efficiencies into certain routes around the county. So as you see on the screen and you have in your proposal, if you look at both of these system maps, they may look like they are covering the same area, but we're covering it in a slightly different way. One of the more significant changes that we are making, which we looked at the community bus plan and the recommendations, is the combination of the 59 and the 4. So the Route 59 runs along Almerton. You can see that on the map on the right in the green, and you see that we are truncating the 59 at the facility here. There's the lay-by out by the parking lot. We then extend the route forward to meet that bus. So what that means is that as they start to come together and we create a transfer between those two routes, we need to make the 59 more equivalent to the frequency on the 4. We're able to do that because of changes in frequency on the south half of the route. And so, again, we're balancing out the system, putting frequency where we can, where we have overcrowding, and then changing the service in other places, decreasing the service in other places in order to balance out the budget. And so those are the types of solutions that we're looking at for October. Bob is going to talk a little bit about what we've heard from the public.
And for some of you, I know we talked about this when we were in the planning committee, but I want to take all of you through the process because the outreach is not just outside, but it's internal. Once we start making these plans and looking at the routes and looking at the data and saying, how can we improve these, first we take them to safety security training because they want to make sure, well, can the buses make a left turn there or not? Will they fit down this street? Then we come back, we make the tweaks, then we take them to the drivers and the customer service representatives, and they give us more input because they know the routes. They're out there already. So we bring those and we take those and we tweak them again. Then we actually do go out to the public, which is what we've been doing over the last several months, and you can see the dates here, and we take their input and we'll use that again and tweak it as we move forward as well. And we've got 2 more upcoming that are public hearings. On the 7th at the Clearwater East Library, we're having that in the evening. And you see most of these were in the evening because those in the past were the requests we got. People said we can't make it during the day. So that's what we did. And then we had one on Saturday as well. That was the most well attended, and they requested a public hearing on a Saturday, so we added a Saturday public hearing. We want to make sure people have the time to come, and of course they're all on PSTA routes so that they can get to us to and from by riding the bus. Some of the comments we've gotten, we're extending the 61, which goes through Dunedin to Countryside Mall. That was very popular. We were looking at the combination with the Jolly Trolley, maybe moving to Edgewater away from Douglas. We had a few comments. They wanted us to stay on Douglas because of the Hale Senior Center, the library, and the ballpark. We also get some comments that actually aren't part of what we're planning, like north-south connections from 580 in Dunedin down to Maine's 60 along Patricia. I think we've got one putting back the East Lake Connector. We've got a request for a later run for the 78, which is one of our most productive routes, a very short route between downtown Clearwater and Countryside Mall. I think as of last year, it was our 2nd or 3rd most productive route. But it ends a little early, and this is one we're looking at. We'd like to get a later run on that, get more people a chance to go to that mall. They've got the movies, they've got their restaurants, because we see the demand coming from Clearwater Beach, things along those lines. There are a few people who want the 59 and the 18 to still go into Largo Mall, but we were going to pull it out to streamline those routes. And of course, we also had comments on people who don't use those stops who like it. So these are the kinds of feedback we're getting. Same thing with Heritage Village. They were asking us to extend the newly proposed Route 9 all the way up here into our lay-by, and as we almost always get, they do want more service on weekends, they want more frequency of service, and they want service later at night. Now moving forward, once we finalize the plans, similar to what we did with Williams Park, now we're going to work with our marketing and communications department. We will have handouts to give to people. We will be spanning out throughout the county. Of course, digital media, Facebook, Twitter, on the website. We're doing everything we can behind the driver's notices, training drivers, training the CSRs to get the word out of these upcoming changes. I don't think it's going to be as big a change overall as Williams Park was, because a lot of these will be splitting of routes. But we will be out there again in different locations with the Yellow Vest ambassadors the week prior to the service change, and this is going to be a little bit bigger than what we did for Williams Park, because now it's going to involve our lay-by here, Park Street Terminal, Countryside Mall, and Gateway Mall. So we have a lot more locations where we will have people letting our riders know, here are the changes, they're coming up next week, and then of course the day of and the day after the changes, so we can help everybody find where they're going to be going. And if we need, maybe some onboard ambassadors for the buses as well, riding the week prior.
So one of the things that I want to make sure that you heard Bob mention at the beginning, is our operator outreach. The number one way that we get information to our riders is through our operators. They are the ones who see them every day on the road, and every single one of them. And so getting that information to the operators is absolutely critical. You have seen the public input on that. That is because the operator is telling the passengers what is happening. And so I feel confident that we are giving people a lot of opportunity to comment, and we're giving them a lot of opportunity to get the information. So with that, I will take any questions about
Thank you,
this information
Cassandra.
item.
I'd like to turn to Commissioner Welch, who is the Planning Committee Chair, with any other comments that you may have from the committee perspective.
No, Bob and Cassandra covered it well. I think they did an exceptional job in outreach. Brad and I were at Crystal Lakes filming a video Friday, and it went very well except for the camera. The camera didn't do too well. The driver didn't see the camera and kind of hit it. But
It wasn't the bus driver, it was the auto.
Just kind of hit it.
Completely ran over it.
knocked it over, but it still worked.
Okay.
So Canon did a great job on that piece of equipment and still shot the video. But that was a great example of PSTA responding to the community who came out and talked about how they would be affected by proposed route change, and our staff responded to that and increased the efficiency, added service there for weekend service by changing routes and consolidating. So it's just a great effort overall, and the June changes are cost neutral, as you said, right? So Planning Committee discussed it thoroughly.
Okay, thank you. We originally planned to have Brad to, at this moment during this item, to have Brad do a kind of an overview about the ridership issues that we have seen, as well as been expressed by our constituents. But we're just going to get through this issue, and he'll discuss it under reports. So we understand that service improvements might be a common discussion point with ridership, but just in case anybody has to leave, since we are running over time, we're just trying to be respectful of everybody's time. So what I'm going to do now is ask if any board members have questions for staff on the service improvements. Anybody on this end? This end? Okay, we will open this up for public comment. I have one card from Mr. Rask, who's also been given an extra 3 minutes by Sally Grasso for a total of 6 minutes.
If I could answer Commissioner Long's question from earlier in the meeting about the connector or opportunities for community circulators, I'd like to do that.
Sure.
We are investigating opportunities for funding models for community circulators. We are working with the cities and the counties and the county on that opportunity. We have talked to county staff about making that a flexible option within the CRA funding. That decision would come to the county commission at a later time, but we are very cognizant of the need for a circulator in Leelman.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cassandra. Mr. Rask, welcome back.
Thank you. Tom Rask, unincorporated Pinellas County. Again, thank you for taking public comment on this information item. It is indeed something that's of great interest to the citizens. And as you all know, Article 1, Section 1 of the Florida Constitution says all political power is inherent in the people. One of those people. When I spoke here 2 items ago, or when I spoke 2 times ago here, I expressed an interest in meeting with PSTA. Now, you will notice that at some meetings, when there's a citizen that has a concern, whether it's with a bus or anything, they'll be directed to staff at the back of the room to deal with that. That didn't happen in my case. So I will take that as that there continues to be no interest on the part of PSTA to meet with, let's call them critics, whether that be me or Ms. Hazelden or any other critic. I note also that Mr. Miller, when he spoke here an hour or more earlier, said, since I have been having problems with my car, meaning because I've been having problems with my car, I've been riding the bus. And that is, of course, going to be true for everybody. When they can ride a car, when they can drive their car and go when they want, where they want, then they will do that. And that is really at the heart of your ridership problem. Does this outreach effort go down as marketing? because to me this is what it is. It really is marketing PSTA. And the auditor spoke about marketing cuts being due to personnel reductions. No, I don't think so. I think they were due to that Greenlight Pinellas, the huge costs were due to marketing of Greenlight Pinellas. You heard also Mr. Lasher say that they had heard that evenings, that was very much requested, that you have your meetings in the evenings as part of the public outreach. But this board has halved the number of evening board meetings it has. And so I would ask that you reconsider that and maybe go back because, again, all political power is inherent in the people. And as I said in my comments that I emailed to you, and I emailed them to you before the meeting so you have time to consider them or debunk them, tell me how I'm wrong or where the information is, as Commissioner Johnson kindly did on one item. He told me where the information was. In this discussion here, there has not been one word about how revenue miles and revenue hours are affected. Not one word. There's been talk about being cost neutral. And they talk about improvements. Well, that's very subjective. What's an improvement? You don't have all the buses. You don't have the money you need to buy all the buses you want. So it seems you should be thinking about cutting this. So I'm asking someone on this board that's still here, please ask, with this plan, will revenue miles, let's just stick to revenue miles, will they go up or down with these so-called improvements? And I would turn to Commissioner Long and ask her, maybe she can ask that question, because she has said here, and she's been quoted in the press, as saying that there will be no tax increase. There's no appetite for that. I'll be sure to communicate that at the public hearing that they have on Go Hillsborough on June 9th. That's the key. The public don't want to pay more taxes. And I would say that I don't know where there's intransigence here. And I don't know if it's coming from the board or from staff or just it's a result of the process. But I really think that you have to think about asking for less money, to ask that the county commission cut your millage rate. Certainly not increase it. It's 0.7305 right now. And my fear or my concern is that PSTA will ask for 0.75 to hit the ceiling of what the millage rate should be. But when you look at that there's no plan to cut any service as was promised in 2014, I would have to call that intransigence, respectfully. And so I'm going to work towards that the millage rate be lowered. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. I don't have any more cards. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the proposed service changes? This is just an informational item today. A vote will be taken at the next meeting, I believe.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Seeing or hearing, yes.
Cassandra, could you be, well, I don't know if you're in a position to answer it today, but surely before we vote, can you get us the answer to Mr. Rath's question about revenue and miles?
We are keeping the revenue miles neutral in this proposal. So the change in, when we look at changing the service around, we look at a couple different things. One is the revenue hours that we are putting out on the service, and that is how we calculate the cost of this. When we do that, we call upstairs to finance and say, Debbie, Mike, what is the incremental cost of providing an additional revenue hour? What is the incremental cost that we are experiencing right now? That incremental cost has been going down. And so when we add an hour or we take away hour, that's how we know what we're saving or what we're spending. We were approaching $75, $76 an hour for incremental cost. We're now just over $69 per incremental revenue hour. And so we look at that every time we make a service change.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Is there any other? Please, Bill.
I have more of a comment.
No, it's time for it's time for comments.
Cal, wait.
No, go ahead.
Just one of the comments that was made is did we meet with individuals privately on this? There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all public hearings that were available. I attended 3 of them. There were a varying number of people that were attending those, but staff was able to meet with us at that time, and so I just wanted to say that we are available and have been available, and if somebody wants to meet with me, I'm available meeting with them individually as I have done previously. Thank you.
Any other comments on the service changes? Okay, I had something. I'll just let you know that North County is very excited about the idea of 7-day-a-week trolley service and sort of the exchange out of the bus line, or the combination of the bus line and the trolley service from a dollar perspective is workable. There will be very little increase to the funding partners. If you remember, the county, the city of Dunedin, the Downtown Clearwater Board, and Tarpon Springs all contribute to this line. And so we are now not only supporting transit riders, but the normal transit riders, but we're also supporting tourism here on a 7-day-a-week service. And it is funny when people come to visit us, you know, they're usually staying a little longer than just a weekend. When that occurs, you get on the trolley on a Sunday and then you go back to try to get on the trolley on a Monday and it's not there. For someone who doesn't live here, you know, that can be a problem. So we are all very excited. I know in Dunedin, our local businesses are excited. I've spoken with folks from Tarpon Springs. They're excited. The only thing I will just add, and this is really for Brad and Cassandra, we have a little bit of a conundrum. If you looked at what some of the Dunedin, whoever was at the meeting, I don't think we had that many people there, but the comment is that on Douglas, we have a little, what you call a destination center, which includes our stadium, which we're getting ready to make a significant investment in, our library, and our Hale Center, and that's sort of like a cluster destination area. That was covered by the bus, I believe, while we are also getting ready to, if you didn't know, the Fenway, historic Fenway on Alt 19 Edgewater Drive is now going to become a 5-star hotel, and that will also be a destination, and it will have a pier in front of it with a possible little ferry. So it's going to be a tourism activity center for sure, as well as local residents, and that the trolley goes by there. Well, we can't seem to figure out how to make the trolley go to both places, and they are keen destination locations for both residents and tourists. So I would just ask Brad and Cassandra to try to get creative and figure out how we can try to accomplish this before we make the final things, if everybody is okay with that.
We'll do our best.
All right. So I don't hear anything else. We will move on to reports, correspondence, and I believe, Brad, you wanted to talk about the ridership issue that we've been hearing about.
I do, thank you. So we are getting toward the end of our agenda. I'll just cover, as she mentioned, the reports, future meeting subjects, and then take any comments from you. Under the reports, this also shows other presentations we made to either the planning or finance committees that we didn't have on the agenda, but next month you'll get a draft 2017 budget, and the planning committee will see that in advance of that, and got an update on our biggest single expense, which is our personnel assumptions. As far as ridership goes, that's also in your report. It is true that ridership has declined substantially from last year. Last year was a record. The month of March and April were very high for us last year, and they have fallen off quite a bit since then. We're still putting together a more detailed analysis that I'll bring back to the committees and to the board in the next month or two. But ridership is across the board on all of our routes, and as the numbers show, the ridership is down. However, as the auditors pointed out, the more challenging factor for PSTA has been that the ridership from our UPass program, which has been very popular with the students, that is not down. And those revenues are static, are a once a year amount, so that those revenues don't go up. In addition, as the auditor pointed out, folks are switching from higher paid fares to the transportation disadvantage, and that ridership is not down. Ridership on that are using transportation disadvantage passes is not down, nor are the free students and other folks down. So it's something that we've been focused very heavily on. I'm very thankful to Debbie and the entire staff that even though our ridership is down and our fares are down even more than our ridership is down, we are still on budget. We have made cuts internally, even before the hacking, the ethical hacking thing. Maybe you can find more savings, I don't know. But the staff has been very resilient to try to come up with ways to save money, and we are still tracking to be on budget for this year. It looks like, at least on the revenue side, we are seeing some leveling off of our fare revenue now that we're into the month of May, and so we're sort of hopeful that that won't decline further. But it's something we certainly have been working on. I'll have a more detailed report for you coming back. As far as the questions about being accessible to folks and outreach, I want to thank the board members for helping me with that. Since we last met, I was happy to come and give an update on PSTA activities to the City of Oldsmar with Mayor Beavis leading the way on that, and I think we're scheduled to go to Tarpon Springs as well. And then just last night, Commissioner Dighton and I were down in St. Pete Beach speaking to their city commission. Whether or not they are all supporters or detractors, I don't know, but they're open to the public. In addition, we've been continuing to hold rider town halls where we certainly hear from all points of view. Some riders are coming far distances on the bus because they know I will be there to tell me their problems with the bus. On a week from Friday, June 3rd, we'll be in Countryside Mall up in northern Pinellas County. And I would expect there'll be riders coming all the way from St. Petersburg up to Countryside Mall just to talk to me. But that's I enjoy that. In addition, I wanted to highlight, and this is moving on to the future meeting upcoming meetings. We have our legislative committee coming up on Monday, June 6th at 1 p.m. And I would like to invite even other board members who are not on the legislative committee to come to that, because we will be welcoming Senator Jeff Brandes, who unfortunately had to cancel earlier this month, but he's moved to coming on June 6th. He's the chairman of the Transportation Committee. I'm sure he has he'll have a lot of ideas on the future of transportation, because that's kind of his thing. So I'm looking forward to that. Last but not least, she's left. I think she might come back next month, but I want to just recognize a 34-year employee of PSTA who's retiring, I think, tomorrow, Friday. Shelby Collier, who's been our transportation superintendent, and I think James has texted me she'll come back next month to be recognized. But hats off to her, and thanks to Mayor Bajowski for stepping up and subbing in for this meeting.
Well done. You're welcome. Thank you. Any questions for Brad on the items that he covered? Okay, I just did have one on that ridership item. Brad, you intend to do a more analyzation, so you can look at different kinds of services and compare them to try to understand where the reduction is coming from.
Yeah.
Versus making an overall statement that the world is down, so we're down, and we're not down as much. I mean, and that's true, but this will help us hone more into what's causing us to be down. For instance, there's been mention of the Jolly Trolley, and yes, I love the Jolly Trolley, but also they had several dolphin movies that increased ridership to the trolley going there, and that's not happening anymore. There are events that are occurring that are cause some of these things. So you will get that back to us. Thank you. So we'll go on to board member comments. I'll start at this end. Brian?
Well, thank you very much. I just wanted to wish everybody a great Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you. Mark, anything?
Yeah, Brad mentioned the fact that James Bradford and I went down and talked to the people at St. Pete Beach yesterday, and we talked to them about the BRT program. Brad gave them an outline of what we're doing, and then explained to them how the BRT would be affecting them. They'll have 2 or 3 places down in St. Pete Beach, plus they'll be coming all the way over from St. Pete. Part of the problem with them is the cost, and we explained to them at this present time they're paying us about $460,000 a year, and that's for the regular current transit that we're running there. And we explained further, and that comes to about 0.2 of a or 2 mils to them, compared with the 7.5 that we normally charge. Is it 2? 0.2. And then we said, what's probably going to happen is with what we're going to be adding, your total cost will come to around $1 million from your 460, and that's more 0.5. And we explained to them one of the things that they could do if they didn't want to take this out of their regular budget would be to put on their, as a referendum, that they would like to join the PSTA, which would be about a 0.73 or 0.75 referendum for them. So they were looking at the possibility of 460 for what they got, $1 million for a little bit more, and the 0.75, which would work up to about 1.73 million coming to us. So the commissioners are looking to each other and trying to decide if they'd like to put this on the as a referendum or not. And I think to a man on the board, they were saying, we'd like to do this. We'd like to figure out some way to get this BRT coming in, and so now we have to figure out how. But again, you can imagine going from $1 million to $1.7 million and asking your constituents to pay for that. So it's up to them, and they'll be talking it over. Thank you.
You look like you have a question of him, Brian.
Pardon me?
Well, just a question, probably more to Brad. Did the contracts that we have with the beach communities, do they contain a fuel escalator clause?
They are negotiated every single year based on whatever we forecast fuel for the next year within our own budget.
Okay.
So, no, they're negotiated every year. They don't have an automatic escalator.
Okay. Well, it might be something we want to consider in the future.
Yeah, I can't remember if there's some sort of clause in there about, if fuel just really spikes or something happens during the year. There might be, but that's something we can look at.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
We hustle on
Commissioner Long.
Yes, I would like to ask either Mark or Brad if there was discussion when you were meeting. When did you go down to meet with them?
Yes.
Last night.
Oh, well, then you surely are aware there's about to be a substantial change in leadership there, and so we may want to follow up in the next couple of weeks or so to bring a strategy to them about how to move forward. I'll be happy to help with that if you need it.
Leadership?
Yeah.
Who's going to change?
Well,
she probably doesn't want to say in public.
Okay.
Well, I don't think it's a secret. It was announced at the meeting.
What?
Mayor Lowe is going to be leaving as mayor.
Oh.
Okay. We weren't told that when we were there, but
Well, she's just got elected the secretary of the Big C, so it doesn't sound like she's leaving anymore.
Life happens.
Life happens. Okay. Well, when did this happen?
I'll talk to you.
Okay.
Okay. Well, on that subject too, since I would say we probably want to go back and I don't know if the legislative committee is looking at all of this, but I mean, this, Commissioner Welch, I'm sure you'll agree with me, this has been a long-time issue that we've avoided addressing because we were going in another direction. I wonder if we shouldn't start thinking about addressing it and coming up with friendly strategies to,
I think the possibility of opening up the special act gets us nowhere, but I do think if they pay something that's equivalent to what the rest of the county is paying, which I think is what Commissioner Dighton was referring to, that gets us closer. But to have a premium BRT service come to a city that's not paying their share, I won't be here, but I wouldn't support it.
Well, that's what the extra $600,000 was all about.
Just for the BRT.
Yeah.
But all the other back office is not supported by them paying 0.2 mils versus 0.75. It needs to be addressed.
I think that whole discussion has to be talked about because let's say you do that. You've got 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Let's say that continues and you got new board members here, new board members there. Nobody will remember how that cost came about. The economy will tank and the first thing they're going to attack is, well, we don't want to pay PSTA anymore. We're not part of that. I mean, that stuff happens. We've got a very new commission in my own city. I see those little things start to happen of things we decided 10 years ago. I don't think it protects us.
I think it's a great idea, but what you have to do is get the population to vote for it.
Yeah. Well, then why not just join PSTA?
So there you are. Because what they're doing right now is paying $460. We're talking maybe $1 million, and you're asking the population to vote to pay $1.7 million.
But why not just ask them to be a part of PSTA?
You've got to have them vote. It's that simple.
In lieu of the time, I'd like to ask that we refer that issue to the legislative committee.
That's fine. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah. Doug, anything?
Not really anything other than I get kind of confused sometimes when it's brought up that, when green light failed, we talked about cutting services, and I continue to hear, I don't see us doing wholesale cuts of routes, like doing away with a complete route, but I continue to hear every time we talk about route changes, for instance today, we cut out a segment of the route, I forget what it was, that goes downtown, that's not being used because they get off. So we reallocate, we cut that, and we reallocate those hours somewhere else to be more proficient. So, in my opinion, we are cutting, or in essence becoming more proficient and efficient with our routes, I should say. So, I continue to hear that we need to cut, and we do cut. When routes or pieces of routes aren't performing, we cut that part and maybe assign it to another route. So, to be a little bit more efficient and, like she said today, revenue neutral. So, I get confused when I hear that we're not cutting. So,
I'm sorry, somehow I skipped over Commissioner Long.
Yeah, I don't know how that's possible, but.
I thought you said what you wanted to say. I didn't realize there was something else.
Now I don't have to say anything because Mayor Beef has so eloquently said it all for me.
Okay, so you're done?
I'm good.
Okay. Anything, Commissioner Barkley?
I'd just like to thank Brad again for his very thorough analysis on the combination of different techniques for increasing the per mile reduction in costs, but I still am a little uncomfortable with some of the choices that have been suggested. So I'm going to withhold further comment till we get the final decision next month, but that is a concern. The other thing is, with regard to many of the negative comments that we heard today, this is a small segment of the population. If we were really doing things that bother people, we would have a lot of people here, and we don't. So please don't urge my fellow commissioners not to be overly reactive to some of the comments that are routinely made on a monthly basis, both pro and con. And everybody have a nice holiday weekend.
My colleagues on the right said it very well. The community bus plan is integral to everything we've done. It's integral to the path forward. We are doing things, I think, the right way. We're not just taking a hatchet and just cutting service, because even when we went through our very surgical approach last year, we had residents come with concerns. I think just like Crystal Lakes, we addressed those concerns, and we did it, I think, in a very sustainable way, and in fact we're able to find ways to improve service. So I echo my colleagues. I think we're doing this the right way, and looking forward to next month's discussion on vehicles.
Thank you. There was a comment made about trying to provide bus service to the Countryside Library, and I would just ask our executive director to see if, I think the flex routes go around there, so I think there might be a potential of flexing the route to that.
We can. We do.
Okay, so that's a solution to the track recommendation. I would remind the board that the city of Clearwater is implementing a kind of a pilot to supplement the transit, the trolley ridership, trolley option going back and forth to Clearwater Beach on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, now between Memorial Day and the 4th of July, to see if we can get more people to use that rather than driving out there. The ferry is still an option and will be an option through the 4th of July. Commissioner Long mentioned Whit Blanton talking to the Suncoast Tiger Bay Club on Friday. I think there'll be excellent presentation. And then the challenge for us, I think, and we've kind of talked about it many times, is to provide an understanding of how transit serves our existing customers and how it could serve our region better if we did this or this or this. And I think that's the opportunity for us moving forward. And so I would urge you to continue to consider that as we move on with marketing and communications. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I want to wish everybody a great holiday coming up. Please remember that school will be out soon, and it's a shortened summer, so there will be a lot of kids on the street, so please be careful with that. And I had the pleasure of serving all of you today. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Good job, Julie.
Thank you.
You too, sir. I appreciate all the things you're doing.
You as well, sir.
Ethical question.
You always put it very to the point.
I get confused.
I love it.
I enjoyed your article.
And I got a couple things for you.
Constant transportation.
That